On today's episode of Hit the Mats podcast, an update from Roman Reigns is on the horizon. Ty Dillinger has requested a release from the WWE, and we talk about the latest pay-per-view and its connotations for the greater WWE universe. Stay tuned! Tonight's main event. Welcome to Hit the Mats. In this corner, from New Milford, Connecticut, your WWE mentor, Dan the Man Maloney, and his opponent from Toledo, Ohio, the filthy casual himself, Chris Holcomb. Let's get it on. Today's date is February 24th, 2019. Hello and welcome to another episode of Hit the Mats podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Chris Holcomb.
And I'm Dan the Man Maloney.
And we're here to bring you all the saucy deets on everything World Wrestling Entertainment. This week, for those of you unfamiliar with the show, this is your weekly WWE wrestling podcast where Dan, the diehard fan, and I, your resident filthy casual, run you through our Raw, SmackDown, and NXT recaps, give you the latest in wrestling news, and discuss a topic about the world of wrestling for your amusement. If that sounds like a good time, be sure to hit like and subscribe down below and give us a nice rating on your podcast services of choice. We have a big announcement just coming fresh off the press. We are now on Spotify. Both Hit the Mats and Hit the Books, our flagship comic book podcast, is now on Spotify. So if you prefer Spotify over, say, Stitcher or iTunes, that is now available for you to enjoy. So please go ahead and take a look at that right well on the website there on the podcast host. And go ahead and let us know what else you'd like us to be on. And we will see if we can't make that happen with our RSS feed. Remember, you can always reach out to us at HTBVids on Twitter, on Facebook at /HitTheBooks, and you can check us out on our webpage at htbvids.com, where you can find links to all of these feeds, iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, and YouTube, on the homepage there, and then you can navigate through to see plenty of other content and lists and different ways to contact us, what have you. We also have a Patreon page, patreon.com /HitTheBooks. This is a collective Patreon that includes both Hit the Books, the comic book show, and Hit the Mats, the wrestling show, as well as any future shows that we may produce in the future. If you would be so kind, we would really appreciate any kind of contribution you can give, as low as $1, and the sky's the limit. However, if you cannot contribute, no harm, no foul. We really appreciate having you here on the show, contributing, watching, listening, what have you. So please don't feel obligated in any way, shape, or form. We're here for your entertainment. Now, without further ado, let's get into the show. This week, we're going to do things a little bit differently. Normally, we would end the show with our topic, but because we had a pay-per-view, the Elimination Chamber, we're going to go ahead and jump into that first as our topic, and then we'll get into the actual shows of the day and then end with the news. All right. So, Dan, you want to run us through what happened at the Elimination Chamber?
Yeah, so the first match was on the pre-show. It was the Cruiserweight Championship match where Buddy Murphy defeated Akira Tozawa. Tozawa had earned that title match through an elimination fatal four-way on 205 Live just about 2 weeks ago. This was a pretty good match. Cruiserweights ended up on the pre-show again. They put on good wrestling, so that's always a little bit of a bummer that they don't get to have that moment on the main show, but this ended up being a more loaded card than it was last year with Elimination Chamber, so solid performance from Murphy and Tozawa. They got a little bit of a crowd reaction, which was nice to see for them because they work hard out there to put on good wrestling.
Yep.
The opening match was the women's tag team championship chamber match. So really entertaining, I think. A lot more so than I expected. Boss and Hug connection.
Yeah.
Sasha Banks and Bayley are the inaugural women's tag team champions. So,
which you can kind of see it. You can kind of see it coming based on who was in the Elimination Chamber with them. There really wasn't that much, I would say, top tier talent competing with them. However, it turned out to be a really solid match. You know, that you had Sasha and Bayley earning it. Like, really, they had to start from the beginning and go all the way to the end, which is nice to see. And it also gave you just that little grain of doubt you needed to buy into the whole show. Because, if they had started later, you're like, oh, obviously, they're going to win it no matter what. But having them start at the beginning gives you just that little grain of hesitation and doubt that maybe, just maybe, they won't be the ones to win. And it'll start a new storyline or whatever the case may be.
Especially with the finish, I really thought that Sonya Deville and Mandy Rose, Fire and Desire, did a really good job building the tension in the end of that sequence. There were several points at the end there after all the other teams had been eliminated and then they had the last two where I genuinely didn't know who was going to win, and I felt that tension. I was very emotionally invested in Boss and Hug Connection, as you know. They were expected to win. They were favorites. But there was some really good wrestling in this match. Liv Morgan had, I think, one of the best performances I've seen from her at all ever. Sarah Logan stepped her game up. Even Nia Jax, who I'm not a fan of generally, throwing herself through that chamber pod at full force and making it look fantastic. I mean, these women all came out and gave 100% effort. It's a really entertaining match. I really liked the ending with the modified bank statement, playing up the shoulder injury that Sasha had going that was being worked a little bit by Fire and Desire. So really, really good match, really impressive, and a really an emotional high point, I think, during the night. Of course, there was another one in the main event, but really set the tone for what I thought was a really good show. Yeah,
it was an outstanding opening for the show. I mean, we had their less important, one-on-one solos matches, but that match really set the tone for the rest of the pay-per-view, which, spoiler, I thought was fantastic.
Yeah.
So, congratulations to Sasha and Bayley. Everybody, expected it, but it's because it's well-deserved.
Well-deserved.
Not because, they're just the heir apparent.
Yes.
Like is sometimes the case.
Yeah, some of us got a little misty-eyed. I'm here in my Bayley shirt today. I was very, very looking forward to that. These two women have contributed so much to the women's revolution and all the changes that have been made to women's wrestling over these years. So to see the two of them get that first title together.
Dan the Man Maloney was losing his mind while we were watching this match. Every time he thought, "Oh no, they're not gonna let him win." No, and then he'd relax and his butthole would stop puckering up so tight. It was.
I've been screwed enough times that they made it believable. I thought a tragedy could be incoming, but luckily they went with the safe bet, and sometimes the safe bet is the best bet, and it certainly was here.
Yeah. I did like kind of the nice little push that Sonya and Mandy Rose were getting throughout the match. I mean, I think they started the match with Boss and Hug, right?
Mistaken. I think so. Yeah, I think so.
Because they were putting on a pretty good show. Even Mandy, who I usually don't really enjoy watching in the ring that much, even she was putting forward a really good effort.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought they both blew the doors off. I mean, I think just about everyone in that match had a better than usual performance. I think the Iconics were better than I've seen them in a while.
100%. They got a pin.
Yeah, they got a pin.
The Iconics got a pin.
Yeah, it was good to see the Iconics have a moment. They pinned Tamina, too. It wasn't like some scrub, it was a monster heel. So everybody brought their A game, and that's really what needed to happen to make that work. So
yeah, no doubt.
Really impressive.
No doubt. So what happened next here?
Yeah, so the next one was the SmackDown Live Tag Team Championship match where the Usos defeated the best tag team in the world, which I think is a misnomer because I believe the best tag team in the world was actually the ones that won the match, which is the Usos.
How dare you?
This was a good match too.
Fresh out of jail.
They're out of the Uso penitentiary and they are the SmackDown Tag Champions once again. This was good. Shane McMahon, even Shane. We were arguing about Shane a little bit when this started.
Well, I say every single time he wrestles, he just goes all out, and it's fucking amazing. Dan, not so much. I think he just doesn't like to see him destroy himself.
He doesn't. He's wrestled 95 matches in his career, and it shows because you don't see any technical wrestling from him. He really just does flippy stuff, his punch combinations, and then jumping off of things,
which is all I need.
And those have a very good place. Yeah, they are a good special attraction type of thing. It's just I don't want to see him all the time. I like that special attraction feel where Shane O'Mac's coming out for his once or twice a year matches and then he's going to destroy himself and you're waiting to see what crazy thing he does next. But he's not much of a technical wrestler because of the inexperience. The Usos, meanwhile, have I actually checked this. They have 951 matches,
Jeez.
whereas Shane has 95 matches. So
Wonder
that's
how
exactly 10 times more, and that shows. So
I wonder how many The Miz has. Did you happen to look that up?
The Miz has 1,320 something.
Well, there you go.
So the Miz has more than enough experience,
He's got the experience
to offset
to
Shane
keep
a little
Dad,
bit.
to keep Dad happy.
Yeah, I mean, Shane does the stuff the things that Shane does, he does very well. It's just a limited number of things, so you like to see him space out his wrestling a little bit, because when you see the same things and then you see him again a month later, it's not quite as special.
Yeah,
but this was Shane at his best. I mean, he was out there. He looked really good. I mean, he looked. I thought he had like a back injury after he hit a coast to coast on SmackDown a couple of weeks ago. It didn't look that way.
No,
and then hitting everything.
He completely sold out on that table when he jumped on one of the Usos on the table there. He just went all out, man.
Absolutely.
I was like, damn.
That man has no regard for his own personal
If you weren't
safety.
injured before, if you hadn't pulled something before, you definitely did something there.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it was a kayfabe thing or if it was real, but he was kind of selling it at the end there. And he's old enough that you're like, I don't know if this is fake or real.
Yeah, I never know.
Did he
with
really
him,
hurt his neck?
Yeah, ever since he got that injury where he went for the coast to coast on Roman Reigns, and Roman caught him with a spear, and he went all dazed-eyed, and you couldn't tell if it was a work or a shoot, and then you found out afterward he was really concussed and really messed up. Like ever since then, I don't know.
Yeah, it's hard to tell, man.
Which adds an element of tension, but also makes me fear for his life.
But I will say this. Of all the emotional events, and there were a lot of them in this pay-per-view, for me, the most emotional event that actually shook me just a little bit, was when Miz gets pinned.
Yeah.
And the first thing he does is just look at Shane and go, "I'm sorry." Just like the biggest puppy dog.
Best puppy dog eyes I've seen in a while.
Ever seen.
They were
and
perfect.
I was like, oh my God, my heart just tore in half.
Yeah.
The Miz has failed his daddy.
Yes. Mr. Miz watching at home, disappointed.
Yeah.
Proxy dad,
no longer
Shane
proud
McMahon.
of him. He has to earn real dad's pride.
Yeah, I was wondering for a
again.
second there if there was going to be a turn, but they stayed together. Shane forgave his proxy son.
Spoiler alert for our show review. But yeah, I was that was one I actually bought in a little to, and I was like, okay. Obviously the Usos are a great tag team and deserve to win anyway. But I loved McMiz so much as a dynamic that I didn't want to see them go away. And it looks like they're not going away.
No, I don't think they are. I think we're going to see the two of them together for the foreseeable future.
Which I'm all about. I love it. I love it.
Good to see the Usos get the win, though. I've said before, I think they're the best tag team in the WWE. Their in-ring work is fantastic. Their mic work is fantastic. Their promos are fantastic. There's just nothing not to like about the Usos for me. I know they've been champion a bunch of times, so, maybe people are getting tired of them a little bit, but they haven't been in a while, so it still felt fresh to me. Yeah. The next match was the Intercontinental title match, where Finn Balor defeated Bobby Lashley and Lio Rush in a handicap match to win that Intercontinental Championship. Finn Balor's first championship since 2016. So, well earned, well deserved.
I'll fucking take it.
There's a guy that really needed some gold.
Yeah.
He's been very over with the fans. He's one of the most over guys in the company. He hasn't had gold in a while. So, yeah, I'm happy to see him get a strap. Feel bad for Lashley, who had 0 successful title defenses, as far as I can tell.
Nope.
But,
However, I think this actually helped Bobby Lashley. And let me explain. Okay, I am a huge Finn Balor fanboy. It's my favorite wrestler. Now that, spoiler alert for the Raw show, now that Aleister Black is on the main roster, that may be changing very quickly. Because I got goosebumps watching Aleister Black on the live shows, the actual shows.
How can you not? That guy is
he's fucking awesome.
He's got that paranormal presence.
It's exactly what I think was missing from this generation.
He's our next Undertaker,
which is what we need.
Baby Undertaker.
We need an Undertaker / Kane style supernatural thing, and I mean old Kane, not like new big ugly monster Kane.
Yeah,
but
he doesn't shave his chest anymore.
Oh my God, his weird glassy eyes. Ugh. Just put the mask back on. But yeah, this had a kind of cool dynamic where Finn, basically trapped Lio Rush, who I don't know what he was thinking in the ring, obviously in the performance. It seemed like Lio Rush was like, "Oh yeah, I'm going to prove I'm worth something, I'm going to step in," and he tags himself in when he's facing Bobby Lashley. Bobby Lashley looks back at him like, "What the fuck are you doing?" get out of my face. Did you really just tap yourself in, while I'm fighting this guy? And so Lio Rush jumps in and gets his ass handed to him by Finn. Finn basically traps him in a corner, knowing that, hey, victory is right in sight, and Lio Rush can see it. He sells it perfectly with his eyes, and his reaction is like, oh no, I might have just screwed over Bobby Lashley and I might have just lost us this title. And of course, Finn pins him and knocks him down and gets the belt for himself. Obviously, it's great for me as a Finn fan because now he's finally got a championship. The last one he got was the first Universal, right?
Yeah, I believe.
And he had that for a day because he injured himself and they made him give it up. So that was cool to see. I love seeing Finn with some kind of belt because I think he's very talented. I love his in-ring aesthetic. I love his whole gimmick. I love everything about Finn Balor.
Although we'll see how his aesthetic is affected when those perfect abs are covered up by championship gold.
I did notice that.
An enormous concern.
I did notice that on Raw. It was an issue. But what happened next is where I think Bobby Lashley actually got a good boost, where he makes it seem like he's just going to walk off like normal, being angry and whatnot, while Lio Rush is in the stage. And then he stops. And, sometimes you're like, is he going to do it? Is he not going to do it? It seemed like he wasn't going to do it because before he's just not done it. But he went full rage monster on Lio Rush and just started smashing him into the ground, one after another, after another, after another. And if you want to sell Bobby Lashley as a villain, that's exactly what needs to happen. You need to show him as this giant hulking monster force that just tears apart anything that pisses him off, gets in his way, messes anything up. And that was probably the first and only time I've ever seen Bobby Lashley really encompass the villain role, or any role for that matter, because I don't think he was a good babyface either.
Very bland.
That was the first time I saw him actually get away from that middle fence sitter position where he's just like, is he going to do anything interesting? I was actually invested in him after he had that whole rage out, tantrum where he just crushed Lio Rush. And I thought it might even be cool if that made a whole dynamic between him and Lio Rush where he just hates Lio Rush and won't work with him anymore, and now they have kind of a like apologetic dynamic / angry dynamic, and they
Aiden English and Rusev Day 2.0.
But unfortunately, spoilers for the show review, they didn't really do that. They kind of made amends, I guess.
But with no explanation, of course.
But that moment was like, wow, okay, now I can see what Bobby Lashley's capable of. Now I can see where he would fit the perfect mold for a scary, intimidating villain. So I was excited to see that. I hope to see more going forward. We'll see. They tend to squander their chances with Bobby Lashley and those types of individuals, but we'll see how it develops. I'm really excited.
Yeah, he got a big pop when he came back to WWE and it was all downhill from there. So we'll see if they can turn the ship around.
Yep.
So the next match was the Raw Women's Championship match where Ronda Rousey defeated Ruby Riott in a very competitive, exhausting extended contest that lasted, I think, about
30 seconds.
Something under a minute, I believe, was the count. I believe it was under a minute. It may have been up to a minute and a half tops.
Yeah. It really sucked to see Ronda Rousey get a squash match against Ruby Riott because they had built up Ruby Riott pretty well leading up to this match. And I thought Ruby Riott actually had some pretty decent matches, on the regular shows leading up to this match. And I was pretty excited. I like Ruby Riott. I think Ruby Riott's a really solid performer. And let's face it, they need some more female villains at the moment. They got some of their best female villains kind of tied up in other stuff, or being a babyface now. So I thought this was a great opportunity to give kind of Ruby Riott some kind of cred. Obviously, they're probably not going to let Ronda Rousey lose the belt because that's their big WrestleMania draw. But I really wanted to see more than just a squash match. And that was probably the low point of the show for me personally. I don't dislike Ronda Rousey, and I certainly don't dislike Ruby Riott. But it was just, you're going to have a squash match for the title belt, really, on a pay-per-view? It just, I didn't like it.
Yeah, so I'm on the fence about it. I I like Ruby Riot's work in the ring, and I do want her to be presented as formidable and not just a jobber leader of a jobber stable, which is how she's been presented.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I did think that Ronda Rousey was in need of a squash. She hasn't had one in some time, since I believe she squashed Alexa Bliss at SummerSlam, and she's gone a long time where she's really been selling to her opponents quite a bit in her successful title defenses. So when she faced Charlotte Flair at Survivor Series, when she faced Sasha Banks at Royal Rumble, even when she faced Bayley on Raw the next night, she's really been, even when she faced Natalya, she's really been selling to her opponents, making them look good.
Yep.
I think it does, I think that's a good thing to a certain extent, where you've got that Brock Lesnar thing where you feel like, you go into a match thinking they're unstoppable, but then once they get beat down for a while, you start to kind of believe. And so you can keep that person unbeaten without necessarily looking invincible. So that's got its role. But I think when you're competing with Sasha Banks and you're beating her in under 15 minutes, then you're the type of competitor that I would think would be able to dominate a Ruby Riott. So that's kind of the balance that I think they were trying to kind of reestablish, that Rousey is, there are competitors that are on her tier, but she will also crush people that are not on her tier. And I think they were kind of reestablishing that. I think they were also kind of bringing back some of that ferocity that we saw with her early in her stint in WWE before she became,
which is when she's the best.
Before she became this smiling,
fangirl.
So
she became what she is in real life instead of
she looked like the baddest
character.
woman on the planet, which is what she's supposed to be. So I kind of didn't mind it for that reason, but I don't like seeing Ruby Riott treated that way, especially because she didn't even outlast Sarah Logan on Raw 2 weeks ago. How is it that Sarah Logan lasted longer against Ronda than Ruby Riott did? That doesn't make sense to me for continuity.
Not at all.
But after the match, of course, is when Charlotte came into the ring to confront Rousey, and then Becky Lynch, the man, fresh off a house show knee injury where Charlotte Flair took out her knees at the house show, went right after that knee injury that had recovered and was now re-injured, came out on crutches to the ring to an explosive reception from the Houston crowd, and proceeded to go right after Charlotte and give her a beatdown with her crutches, Tommaso Ciampa style. Shout out to Ciampa for the crutch beatdown trademark, and then turned to Rousey, who showed some interest in joining her, and they had kind of been aligned to some extent the last couple interactions that they've had.
Yeah.
And so Becky gave her a crutch, and then when Ronda turned her back on Becky went after Ronda and gave her an additional beatdown, a really rough-looking one that busted Ronda open a little bit, too.
They busted her head open, yeah. She had blood running down the side of her face and in her hair and stuff, because it looked like at some point Becky had taken a swing where Ronda didn't expect her to take the swing, and she, instead of protecting herself with her arms, she had lowered her arms to
well, it happened on the second. So it happened on the second swing. So Becky hit Ronda in the midsection. She went to her knees, and then she kind of was leaning back, and so Becky was going to come from the front and kind of do like a diagonal blow to the midsection. But then Ronda leaned forward after she had started her swing, so she was expecting to give another shot to the back.
She got clipped pretty
and
good.
And got her in the head and gassed her open pretty good. Didn't look all that major from the photos I saw afterward. It didn't look that major. Becky probably needs to be a little bit more careful with those crutch shots. She was, I think Ronda's the kind of person that's going to be asking to please hit me as hard as you can and don't worry about it because I'm a tank and I want this to look good.
Yeah.
And so
with Charlotte.
It did seem like she was letting loose a little bit. But yeah, maybe be a little bit more careful. But it also made the segment look a lot better. That looked like a genuine beatdown.
It did look pretty genuine.
Both of them were bleeding, actually. Charlotte Flair got her arm. It was bleeding from the arm a little bit.
Behind her elbow there.
Yeah, so
she got hit.
They
too.
both ended up bleeding. So a beatdown segment. You get to see the man on TV again. The fans were there for the man. You saw those T-shirts everywhere. So just the man showing that she is not necessarily happy about the situation of being replaced at WrestleMania, and just making sure that they don't forget that she is around.
Yeah, and I do want to give one shout out to Ronda Rousey. I did enjoy the Sonya Blade costume. I recognized it right away. Dan and I were watching. I'm like, she's wearing Sonya Blade's costume. Yeah. She's wearing a Mortal Kombat outfit. I'm fucking all on. And I think her Mortal Kombat Sonya Blade outfit looked way more badass than her actual, rowdy Piper, kind of aesthetic with the, the kilt and kilt style skirt, all that stuff.
And she wasn't readjusting herself the whole match,
Yeah,
which was a really nice change of pace.
She wasn't pulling out that camel toe there the entire time.
And Becky also had a X-Men thing, I think. I heard some debate about whether it was X-Men or Kill Bill. The color, I guess the color combination didn't match up to Kill Bill, but it looked like X-Men.
Yeah, it looks somewhere in between like the Bryan Singer X-Men jet suit, maybe more of the first class, like X-Men first class suit. It looks somewhere in between that and maybe the Kill Bill like one piece, suit from Kill Bill, the yellow and black and yellow one. I don't know which one it is.
Wrestlers are freaking nerds, man.
It looked more like the X-Men one to me, but it's hard to say.
So, but that was a good segment. I thought it was a good way to just remind everybody that the man's around and is not going quietly. So the next match was Baron Corbin and Braun Strowman in a no disqualification match.
Now this is a match I on paper we were like, okay, we've seen this 100 times. Who cares? But I think it has some pretty nice high moments, especially towards the end there, where, oh my God, Bobby Lashley is fucking strong. McIntyre was there, Corbin was
all
there,
that strength too.
But Bobby Lashley was the core piece that they brought out just for that purpose. Basically, towards the end of the match, they team up on Braun Strowman is getting just demolished by Drew McIntyre, Baron Corbin, and Bobby Lashley, all teaming up against him again. No disqualifications, so of course tables are everywhere, and the actual stairs for the ring are in the ring now, and they set it up. They put the stairs in the ring, and they put a stack of tables in front of it, and then all three of them take Braun Strowman and lift him with seemingly Bobby Lashley taking the brunt of the force.
Yeah, the other two were kind of just stabilizers.
Like, hey!
They were stabilizing a little bit, and that's about it.
Yeah, and then they slam him and breaking both tables, and it was a pretty fucking awesome moment, I'll say. Like, that's what I want to see.
Good tribute to the Shield. It was the Shield powerbomb move.
Yeah.
Pretty fun.
So that's exactly what I want to see personally, from the big monster men, I want to see them smashing stuff and just wrecking the ring and just leaving, nothing but waste and splinters in their wake,
Yeah.
That's what I wanted to see, and that's what I got. So,
yeah, I thought
again, big kudos to this pay-per-view. They really went all out on a lot of ways.
Yeah, I thought this ended up being as good as it could have been. I mean, I'm really, really worn out on Corbin and Strowman at this point. I've just seen it enough times, but I don't know if that's the beginnings of a stable between McIntyre, Lashley, and Corbin. I wouldn't hate that idea. I think WWE needs more stables in general. There really aren't hardly any stables on the main roster at all. So it's fine, but it does, just kind of putting these guys together because you don't really know what else to do with them, and none of them have really impressed me in a while. Kind of feels like the SpongeBob SquarePants evil group, every villain is lemons.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's fine. I'm interested to see where they go with it. It seems like they're kind of spinning their tires on at least Lashley and McIntyre, and probably Corbin too, now that he's not in the general manager or authoritative role anymore. So maybe this will be a good way to find a direction for those guys.
Fingers crossed.
For the sake of continuity, I'm not really sure why Braun Strowman didn't get any help if Corbin did, because they have had that situation come up before, and someone's always come to Strowman's
Kurt Angle
aid.
and Finn Balor.
Finn Balor, someone like that. So a little strange, but I mean, I think the match was much better than I expected, like most of the matches on the card for the night, and I think it went as well as it could have.
Yeah, for sure.
I was happy with it. And then the main event was the WWE Championship Elimination Chamber match. Daniel Bryan, in the end, was able to overcome the power of Kofi Mania, which was running wild in Houston.
Yeah, people were losing their fucking minds.
It was
for Kofi.
running wild.
And I get it. Believe me, I get it. But the dude had a buildup of 1 week.
Yeah.
1 week. And I get it. The diehard fans are all in on Kofi Kingston. He's obviously been in kind of the comedy clown role with New Day for a long time and hasn't been able to do much else just because of the nature of his character and what he plays. However, I think as great as it was, as solid as a moment it was, I think that they just didn't give it enough time to breathe. And that's because Mustafa Ali was originally supposed to be there. This match originally had nothing to do with Kofi Kingston, but he got such a strong backing on the previous episode of SmackDown that they just had to do something with him. And they're like, well, let's just buy into this momentum we've got with Kofi Kingston. And, after his whole match where they're setting up who was going to be last, who was going to be first and whatnot. I just wish it had more time to breathe to get to that point, to that epic moment. And it was an epic moment. I don't want to take anything away from Kofi Kingston. He was great. But the problem is everybody in that ring was great. Everybody, I mean, probably the least entertaining of the entire group was like Hardy. But even he was going all out, really selling this event, making it a great match from beginning to end. And I just wish if they were going to go that route, and it seems like they're going to based on the regular shows going forward, I just wish they would have gave it more air to breathe and more space. I get it, it was a last minute substitution because of an injury, and they didn't necessarily know how much momentum he was going to get, but I don't know. It just wasn't as great as I think it could have been and had the potential to be. I love that Daniel Bryan is still the champion just because I love the whole ridiculous aesthetic of the Captain Planet Daniel Bryan, going out there and having this great rant every week and having Rowan backing him up, quoting Galileo, and just brandishing his all-natural hemp belt made with the wood of a fallen oak tree and natural shells.
Naturally fallen.
Yeah. Just it's wonderful, and I'm glad that Daniel Bryan won in the end, but it seems like a lot of the fandom was disappointed just because there was so much momentum behind Kofi Kingston. So I don't know how everybody walked out of that event and how they felt about it, but I think it was a perfect balance of maintaining the kind of aesthetic you need going forward to keep the hype up around the whole Daniel Bryan kind of circus act, which may be coming to a close soon. We'll see. And the whole momentum, the last second explosive momentum you were getting from Kofi Kingston. They allowed Kofi Kingston to really shine all the way to the very end, which they should. And I think that was probably the best way to handle it, because you didn't just hand it to the guy that had the instant momentum. You actually gave him a real spectacle, a real display of his talents, let him perform to the high degree that he can and is capable of, but has often been ignored for because he works under a comedy troupe. And I was really impressed. I thought it was a great showing by everybody involved. But I wish there had been just a little bit more time for Kofi to develop in the storyline to build that hype even more. And maybe even give him the belt in the end. Unfortunately, it's really hard to justify giving the guy the belt when he came in as a substitute a week ago. It doesn't work very well.
Well, I think I'm going to disagree with your first point, just because I think that the crowd reaction and the way they ended the show, I think it shows the fact that this has happened in 6 days shows, I think, that they've got something special on their hands. I mean, the condensed timeline is just all the more indicator that the fans are hungry for this. I think there are a lot of people out there that have felt for a long time like Kofi deserved some kind of good singles push before his career was out. He's been with the company since 2007. He had a brief time where he was sort of moving in the direction of being a title contending singles competitor. And then he had a famous moment with Randy Orton where the two of them were in a number one contenders match. Kofi screwed up the finish a little bit. So what was supposed to happen was that Randy Orton would hit his little head punt, and then he would hit the RKO on Kofi, and then that would end the match. And instead what happened was Kofi didn't get in position for the head punt and just waited for the RKO. And then there was this, now infamous moment where Randy Orton is screaming stupid, stupid at him on live TV with the mics picking it up before just hitting the RKO and ending the match. And apparently went to the backstage. And at this time, Randy Orton was the top star in the company besides Cena, and apparently just trashed Kofi, totally killed his push. He's never been back in singles competition again because of that. So I think there's been a lot of feeling like Kofi deserved this for a while. I know that there were a lot of people that were really satisfied to see Kofi pin Randy Orton specifically in this match.
Yeah, I'm sure.
A little bit of redemption there for him. But I think this is something, people have complained about with WWE for years is that they don't capitalize on this kind of thing, that they stick to whatever plans that they had regardless of crowd reaction, that they have the Batistas of the world win the Royal Rumble to a hail of boos, that they stick with Roman Reigns when every time he's on TV they're chanting Roman sucks and they're still pushing him in the main event. So this was a case where there was an organic fan movement behind a guy who had, for a long time, a lot of people felt like he deserved more than he was getting. He got an opportunity because of someone got injured. Kofi Mania exploded out of nowhere, and WWE adapted and immediately capitalized on it. And I don't think that this is the end of Kofi's story. I think this was a really good starting point.
Yeah.
So I'm happy with the fact that they're riding the wave of the momentum instead of pushing against it like they do so often. And they did that with Becky too.
Well,
and that's another. And that. So I think we're seeing they're starting to understand that when they get this kind of energy behind someone, it's okay to adjust your plans and capitalize on it and push that person and get behind them and strap the rocket to their back and see where it takes you.
Which is what I think they did.
Mm-hmm.
I think they totally bought into the momentum. They made it so that he could shine through the entire pay-per-view.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it would have been improper to actually have him take the title at the pay-per-view 6 days after he was introduced, and 6 days. When Kofi first went into the ring, he was not getting that big crowd reaction on SmackDown. It was the fact that he battled through everybody that you expected to beat him, that he pinned Daniel Bryan, that he beat Hardy in the ring. He beat Samoa Joe unexpectedly. Like he put on a great performance, and then he had that great character moment with AJ Styles, and that's what pushed him really over the top, where they're like,
11 years.
Give this man some fucking respect. That's what pushed him over the edge. I don't think his introduction mattered to most people until he started making that great spectacle, that great show on SmackDown, and that's where most of that momentum was coming from, in my opinion.
Well, I think part of that, though, was just
because
that
most people aren't even aware.
When he was first inserted into it, he was kind of just a substitute, a placeholder. So I don't think anyone expected that he would be as competitive as he was.
Exactly.
So once they saw it,
Exactly.
then they realized it could actually be something to get behind here. So I think I still think that I still think this kind of thing doesn't happen instantaneously. I think that there were feelings about Kofi that have been lingering beneath the surface for a long time, and then seeing that performance has brought all of those things out. So I don't think it's just, some guy that's in a comedy troupe on the mid card had a moment and now everyone's behind him. I think there have been a lot of underlying feelings around him and his treatment. And really, there is a large segment of the fan base that feels that black wrestlers in general haven't been treated great in the main event scene for a very long time. That's part of it too, I know, for a fair number of fans, and there are fair complaints about that too. So I just think that there were a lot of feelings that were dormant, that were kind of just brought out when he got this moment in the gauntlet match where he had the great performance, because then it felt like, holy crap, the way they're treating him here, he looks really formidable. Maybe he can win. So let's get on board.
And I think that's exactly what they're going to do. I think they're building towards a storyline. Spoiler again for SmackDown. Kofi pins Daniel Bryan on SmackDown. It's not a title match, so he doesn't lose his belt, but clearly they're setting up that, hey, you should fear Kofi because he may be coming for that belt. And that, I think that's clearly what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Or at least probably should happen. We'll see if they adjust or not. But
yeah,
I think clearly they're going full steam ahead with his momentum. And I think it was the appropriate action to have him put on this great spectacle, this great showing, pin Randy Orton, and then just come up just a little bit short of Daniel Bryan so that Daniel Bryan can finally conclude this whole overarching Captain Planet storyline that he's been pushing, and then transfer into giving Kofi his final, acknowledge in the form of the belts and a great match with
give him
Daniel
a real
Bryan.
chase. Yeah, nothing wrong with giving him a real chase.
And you couldn't really ask for a better partner to go against, with Daniel Bryan, because Daniel Bryan is excellent in the ring. He's very technical, and Kofi has some technical skills from what I've seen, but it seems like he's more of a guy that you like to see with the striking and the high flying a little bit. He's got a nice little balance going.
Yeah, I like the contrast of their styles. It's fun.
And I think it's perfect for the action going forward, where Daniel Bryan in his current character is very serious, and wants to send a serious message, where Kofi is not. Kofi is kind of the comedic, laid back, I'm the guy, but now he's getting a little bit of steam because he's proving that, hey, I am still capable of doing this real-time solos, expertise. And that's cool, and I think that was the appropriate action going forward. And, I'm not saying that it shouldn't happen. I'm saying it would have been inappropriate, I think, to do it just 6 days later after he just popped in as a random substitute. But it is very cool to see, and clearly he's got a big push behind him, both from the crowd and from the company, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, Kofi Mania is trending on Twitter. Even the Kingslayer got in on the action this weekend, so a lot of energy behind him. So for the show overall, I gave it a 7.0. I thought that there were a couple matches that really exceeded expectations, and I thought there were a couple matches that were as disappointing as I expected. I think the emotional high points of Boss and Hug winning the first women's tag titles at the beginning, and then the emotional high point of Kofi getting the standing ovation, being with his New Day brothers, going into the locker room as the show faded out. I think those were two moments
that was a great visual.
that made the pay-per-view. I mean, this was a pay-per-view I did not have high expectations for, and I was really impressed, and it was an emotional ride, and I think they did a great job. It was just a couple of filler matches in the middle that I didn't like that brings the grade down a bit for me.
Okay. Yeah, I'm right along with you. I'd give it a 7 myself. I think there was a lot of great stuff to be taken away from. I think that every match that we thought was going to be bad was actually pretty solid to great. The women's elimination match, the men's elimination match was great as we expected. Even the kind of
better than I expected.
The Braun Strowman Baron Corbin thing, even that was at least solid and had a great, flashy ending that was fun to watch. The whole dynamic where Bobby Lashley got a little bit of a push and Finn finally getting his belt. That was great. I think there was a lot of good to be taken away from, and I think there's a lot of momentum now to go forward. I think, again, my biggest weak point for the show was just the squash match where, Ruby Riott just got squashed immediately, and then that introduced the time frame for Becky Lynch to come out and Charlotte Flair to come out and make some chaos, and that was cool, but I would have rather seen at least something from Ruby Riott, and that was a little disappointing. But other than that, I'd say really, really good pay-per-view, really solid, and like I said, I also give it a 7.
Yeah, good job, guys. Good job, Elimination Chamber.
So again, that's our topic for the show. We just wanted to go ahead and put that at the front because obviously it took place before the show reviews. So let's go ahead and get into Raw. So the big point of the open was the introduction of 4 NXT characters finally coming to the main roster. Aleister Black, NXT. Ricochet, Johnny Gargano, and Ciampa were all introduced to the main roster and will now be on the main roster going forward. And holy fuck, was this hype. This was hype. Now,
never been so excited about Raw.
I will say this. Raw still found a way to suck. It was very average.
They weren't enough.
It was very average. And believe me, they did their best to bring this fucking show to watchability. It was still just average. It was fine. It was fine. It was fine. It was fine.
Was it though? But was it though?
Yeah, I don't know. So our first kind of big match was Strowman once again fighting with Corbin.
This is becoming Brady Manning, only they're not good.
Yeah, and we had a little appearance of an injury with Strowman. He had, obviously the damage done from the pay-per-view, and he was very much selling that. So
had his brand name rock tape all set up.
The tape all over his back and whatnot. And of course, Baron Corbin was trying to sell it, but in the end, it was just a boring fucking match and just another thing we didn't want to see. It made sense to make them hate each other when it was the whole dynamic that Baron Corbin had just been ejected from his management position and he was pouting because he wasn't getting the title shots he thought he deserved. And then he framed, Braun Strowman. So Braun Strowman lost his opportunity to fight Brock Lesnar, and then he flips the limo and all that stuff. That's when it was appropriate to have them fighting. It's now like a month and a half later. It's not interesting anymore.
Even longer since the original. I mean, the original feud started with Corbin screwing Strowman over at the Crown Jewel event in his match against Brock Lesnar for the vacated Universal title, and it's just been going on and on and on. I don't know how many matches we've seen involving these two guys, but it's way too many. I'm mildly interested the first time they go at it, but we got to be going on 10 times they've gone at it in these last few months. I just can't take it anymore.
Yeah, Baron Corbin is a good villain. just have him do something relevant.
Mm-hmm.
This isn't relevant. There's no title shot in the mix with these two guys. It's just purely a match to have a match.
Mm-hmm.
Every single week, we're seeing them over and over and over again, and it's wearing out its welcome very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one of the big problems with Raw right now.
And this match was so long.
It was way too long.
Did not stop. It just
way
kept
too
going and going and going. Yep. And then the finish just came out of nowhere. Like you build that match up like that, and then you just end it in super telegraph predict.
Yeah. And then
I don't even want to talk about it anymore.
Yeah, it's very distressing as people that have to watch this show every week.
Yeah.
We don't want to be wasting our time. We want to be entertained.
They got me all excited with the NXT, and then they make me sit through that and kill all my buzz.
Yeah, it really did kill all the momentum. Without a doubt, it did. As Strowman is walking out, Paul Heyman walks out to give a nice little promo for Brock Lesnar.
The Advocate.
And it was very entertaining to see Strowman just contemplating whether he should smash him through the table that was next to him or not. That was fun to watch and to see, Paul Heyman basically wet himself. And then, of course, Strowman walks off and doesn't do anything. Again, making this way less entertaining than it could have been. But, that's Raw. Paul Heyman gives his little speech about Seth Rollins, sucks Seth Rollins' dick, and then commences in telling him how he's going to be crushed by Brock Lesnar, the unstoppable force, blah, 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 blah. And Paul Heyman's great, so, I always welcome Paul Heyman, but once again, Brock Lesnar not there.
Yeah. And Seth, not that impressive as usual in his promos. He doesn't, I don't know what it is about him. He seems to say all the right things. He seems to do it fine, but I don't feel anything.
He just falls flat.
I don't feel anything.
Yeah, he's great in the ring, obviously. He's amazing in the ring, but he's just
top 3 for me.
He falls so flat in everything he does promo-wise.
I don't feel it with him.
Yeah. Next up, we had a Finn Balor tag team match where he teamed up with Ricochet and fought Bobby Lashley and Lio Rush, which conveniently made up, I guess. I don't know. I was hoping there would be kind of more of a hatred dynamic between Lio Rush and Bobby Lashley, where Lio Rush is trying to earn back his approval.
Explanation.
But no, we just dropped that.
They're just friends again.
All the momentum we had, we just dropped it. And of course, Finn Balor and Ricochet win, protect the title belt. Obviously, I don't think this was a title match necessarily.
No, this is just
it was an opportunity to give Ricochet some camera work and let him do some cool flips and whatnot and show what he can do.
And it was a fun match. I like seeing Lio Rush out there with I was pining for Lio Rush and Finn Balor to go at it at Elimination Chamber, and they really didn't go at it directly all that much. And we got to see Lio Rush wrestle a little bit, and I think he's a really good wrestler. So seeing him with Ricochet, seeing him with Finn Balor, I think there were a lot of fun moments in that match. Ricochet, of course, an average match for Ricochet is eye-popping to any average fan.
Yep.
This crowd was really bad all night.
Oh, man. I forgot to mention that.
That was the story of the night for me, this was a perfect example.
Yeah, you're exactly right. I actually wrote it on the top of my notes, and I forgot to mention it. Worst crowd ever is my note.
Literally ever. You can't get worse.
It was so flat and just nothing.
I've never seen anything like it.
I get it. There was a handful of boring matches and events in this thing. It wasn't that boring. No. There should have been at least something, especially when the NXT guys were in, because they were putting on a fucking show. But this crowd was fucking awful.
Yeah.
Just atrocious.
I mean, the biggest reactions they got all night was just when Ricochet did some of his eye-popping stuff, and they went, oh... they weren't cheering. They weren't happy for him. They weren't thank you. They weren't this is awesome. Yeah. It was just, whoa, that was kind of crazy.
It was a really bad crowd.
Flat. It took all the energy out of some really good wrestling that happened on this show.
Yeah.
And it was, I really hope that Lafayette, Louisiana is blacklisted by WWE moving forward. They do not deserve any more shows. Awful. At least they don't deserve any more televised shows, because I couldn't believe what I was seeing with them. It took all the energy out of the room.
When I think of Louisiana, I picture like the Saints crowd where they're just ridiculously over the top and loud and boisterous and on the edge of being assholes, like that's what I picture when I think of Louisiana sports and entertainment. This was the exact opposite. There's just nothing.
You want to talk about filthy casuals? I heard someone tell a story who was there on wrestling Twitter where they said that they overheard two people talking behind them, and those two people thought that they were at WrestleMania because there was a WrestleMania sign above their heads.
Are you serious?
That's actually
my
so. You want to talk
God.
filthy casuals? No, that's extra filthy casual right there. That's what that crowd was.
That's not even.
They didn't
casual.
know what was going on.
That's just guy they pulled off the street because they didn't fill all the seats.
They didn't know what was going on. They didn't know who the NXT guys were for sure. They barely reacted to Seth Rollins. Monday Night Rollins barely got a reaction from this crowd.
Yeah.
And when Seth isn't getting a reaction on Raw, you
It's
know
not-
the crowd is dead.
Not good news.
Really disappointing,
Yeah.
and really, it's too bad for these NXT guys that all had great debuts, including Ricochet, who did great in this match and was super entertaining as always.
Yep. So once again, Ricochet gets. I think Ricochet got the pin, correct? Because of course we're pushing the new guys. So of course, spoiler alert,
Yeah,
they won.
640.
Yeah, the NXT guys won every single match they were in for both Raw and SmackDown. Big surprise there. But obviously they're getting a very, very generous, strong push from everybody involved
I welcome it fully.
because they're fucking awesome.
I welcome it
Yeah.
fully.
This isn't like EC3 or something. This is like top tier NXT, the best that they fucking have going forward.
Yeah.
And I was surprised that not only did they push all four of their best guys, but they also gave them such a strong push in both shows. Like they were the focus of both shows after a pay-per-view. You know, I was very impressed.
Yeah, and rumor qualifier, but I did hear this floating around in the internet wrestling community. I've heard it said that Vince McMahon decided he wanted to bring some NXT guys in to give the main shows a shot in the arm a little bit, and he basically just went to
Raw
Triple
needs
H. He basically just went to Triple H and said, "Who are your best guys?" And I'm not going to pick them. Just tell me who your four best guys are and bring them over here. And apparently those were the guys Triple H picked, if this story is true.
Yep.
And if so, excellent choices. Papa
Yep.
H, because
Yep.
all
Triple
of these
H
guys were sensational.
Let's face it, Triple H just needs to be in charge of the entire company.
Please, immediately.
He is
Immediately, forever.
I love Vince as a character on the show. I do not love Vince as a
Yeah.
manager of the show.
Can we just make him the queen of WWE, where it's just like he just comes
makes
down
public appearances
from his ivory tower and waves at people, and then goes back to not doing anything or making any decisions?
Yeah, I love when he comes out in his big walk, you know.
Yeah.
And I love the way he sells his voice on the mic.
Yeah.
I love how he's such a big fan of Charlotte Flair. You know, I love everything about Vince except for the behind doors stuff.
Yes.
And
Papa H.
At least from
please.
what we hear and what we think we know, we
Yeah.
could be completely out of line. Who knows? But yeah, I would love it if Triple H became the main person in charge of
NXT
everything.
invasion angle incoming.
Ooh. Next up, we had a tag team matchup where the Revival, with their brand new shiny belt, went up against Gargano and Ciampa.
Hashtag DIY.
And again, NXT guys won because they were getting them a really nice push. But it was a really entertaining match.
Awesome match.
It's a really
Awesome
entertaining match. It was probably the best match of the night, I think.
Yeah, stole the show for me.
Yeah.
Johnny Wrestling really showed what he's all about. I'm a huge Johnny Wrestling mark, as you know. You know, he had it. That was really the match where I fully understood how bad the crowd was, because Johnny Wrestling was putting on a clinic at one point where he was taking both these two guys out, and he was looking for something, anything out of the crowd, and was just getting crickets. And it took so much out of the moment when he's working so hard out there. And he was absolutely sensational. Ciampa was sensational, selling the knee injury on the outside and popping in and out at just the right times.
Yep.
You know, these are two of my favorite tag teams in the company, along with the Usos. Just an absolute clinic, much better than 95% of what you see on Raw week to week, which is the value that these NXT guys bring to the show when you call them up for a showcase like this.
Yep. Next up, we had McIntyre making a case that he wants to be at WrestleMania and this and that. And then Dean Ambrose, in his very chaotic original form, comes up and slaps him across the face and goes, "You still want that match now?" And then he turns around and walks off. And of course, you know, Drew McIntyre, set up the damn match. And he turns around and goes after Ambrose. And then, unfortunately, it was just a squash match.
Yeah, not good.
So Dean Ambrose just got crushed, and it was just like, okay, well, that was fun, I guess.
Yeah,
you know?
the promo was much better than the match.
Yeah, and then Rollins has a nice little promo right after. And then, again, my favorite version of Dean Ambrose comes up and goes, "Hey, bro, why didn't you help me?"
Yeah.
And Seth Rollins is like, "Do you realize how much you fucked me over? Are you
out of your
serious?"
mind? And then, of course, we got one of the great facial expressions in the history of WWE.
It really was
I've never
great.
seen anything like that.
It was exactly what I want to see from Dean Ambrose.
Quintessential Ambrose.
And that along with the NXT performances is what made the show for me and made it average instead of bad. And this was one of the few times that the crowd actually had a little fun and did something. They actually laughed at Dean Ambrose's reaction.
Uproarious.
That was the only time in the entire show that there was actually something significant coming from the crowd.
Sad.
And it was a backstage promo.
Yeah, so disappointing.
Yeah. So that was I was entertained to watch the promo. Again, Seth Rollins comes in a little flat, but Dean Ambrose kind of saved it. Next up, we had Nia Jax and Tamina come out and call out Bayley and Sasha, and I know you love Bayley. You got the shirt on.
Hugging is my business.
You're a hugger.
Business is good.
I am not. So full disclosure, I do not like Bayley's gimmick. I don't like the character. She's good in the ring. I get it. She's very talented in the ring.
Great.
But everything else about her, I can't stand. And this was the worst display of mic work I have ever seen. Period.
You haven't seen much of Bayley then.
That was Bayley's mic work on this little, nonsense, promo, I guess you could call it, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
It was so cringeworthy. I had so much trouble watching it. And you could see it in Sasha Banks' face where she's just trying to help her buddy out, but it's just not working. And it was bad, Nia and Jackson, Tamina.
The horrible crowd didn't help.
Yeah, the crowd was definitely not helping at all.
I think they got more of a reaction than anyone did the whole night, to their credit, but it's still, the best reaction out of this crowd was still almost nothing.
I mean, as long as this tag team's a thing, just let Sasha have the mic. That's all I ask. Because Bayley, she's rough on the mic.
Yeah,
she's very rough on the mic.
I think it's the main thing that holds her back. I mean, there is a reason that I think the other three horsewomen have had much bigger runs on the main roster than she has. There's a reason that they were called up before she was from NXT. And I think the promo work is her number one problem, the number one obstacle to her reaching that next level of star. I love her in-ring work. I think that she is my favorite in-ring performer among the women. I think the way she tells stories, I think her diverse moveset, I think the way she's always innovating, I think the physicality of a lot of the things that she does are just, they're really, really sensational to me. I think she's so good in the ring, so I'm a big fan for that reason. And because she's one of those passionate people in the industry about professional wrestling. But her mic work, I just don't understand how it hasn't gotten any better after all these years. She had a lot of time to work on her speaking when she was NXT Women's Champion, and we're still years later, and it sounds exactly the same. It's a total train wreck whenever she starts speaking. It is really disappointing because I think she's capable of such great things. But I think the most consequential part of this segment was that they announced that they would be defending those titles across all brands, including NXT. Which opens up the possibility of the match that I've been pining for since Boss and Hug became a team, which is Boss and Hug Connection versus the Sky Pirates. I really hope we get to see that match before Boss and Hug's title run is
Kairi
over.
Sane with a main roster belt.
As much as I definitely want to see that too. I mean, if you were to put those two teams together at an NXT TakeOver event, it would blow the roof off the place, and it would be a match of the year candidate immediately. These are the two best women's tag teams in your company, and you now have the possibility of floating on over to NXT and challenging the Sky Pirates and making it happen. Everybody would go absolutely insane for that match. It would be a fantastic match. Those are four next level performers that also work great together and have tons of chemistry as far as the individual teams. So hopefully we get to see that happen. I'm happy to see that they're not limiting them to one show. They need to be able to float around. They need to kind of be free agents. I believe in the brand split, but allowing people to float around a little bit, I think, is a good thing and an important thing. So I was really happy about that part of the announcement, but the promo overall, definitely cringeworthy.
For sure. I assume we're going to talk about this in some future episode, but I think this might be a possible solution for the belt issue that I currently have with the show, where I think there's just too many titles. And I think having the women's tag team title crossover.
There's a lot of belts.
There's a lot of belts. There's a lot. Intercontinental, Universal, United States, SmackDown's WWE Championship. It's just the WWE Championship, but it's on SmackDown. Got both the tag teams for the men's, the female tag team belt. And then if you throw in NXT's belts, like it's just
you got 3 more.
That's a
4
lot.
more.
Yeah,
5 more.
Yeah. Then 205 Lives belt.
You got about 14 belts total, I think.
Yeah, it's a lot of belts.
It's a lot of belts.
Next up on the show, we had a funny little Elias introduction. Elias being what he's good at, a clown with a guitar. And then we had a fucking awesome introduction for Aleister Black. And it followed suit in SmackDown, so it wasn't just this show. But yeah, I got goosebumps. I got goosebumps from
How can you not?
Both of his introductions. I did not know he was going to be fighting Elias. Elias is one of the guys I just don't like watching in the ring. But Aleister Black throwing his fucking monstrous kicks was what made the match great. Just hearing the fucking smack of those kicks and like seeing how technically sound they are from a martial arts background. Like
kickboxer. And it shows.
Man, it was fucking awesome. And I love the whole bouncing off the bottom rope and then just going straight into his little trance pose.
That's the signature thing.
And it's
vintage Aleister Black with his mind games.
When he does it perfectly, especially like right in front of his competitor who's like picking himself up, that's when it's fucking amazing. And like this entire match, Aleister Black by himself gave me goosebumps this entire match, and it made me feel like a kid again. That's probably one of the few times since I've gotten back into wrestling with you that I really felt like a child again. Like I felt like I was watching Stone Cold Steve Austin fighting The Undertaker in some big giant pay-per-view or something, The Rock coming out and, taunting Stone Cold Steve Austin in the face and then having this monstrous match, or seeing Mankind smash through the top of the cage, whatever the case may be. I felt like a kid again, and that's a very good sign. And I hope they keep pushing him going forward because he has one of the coolest gimmicks. He has one of the coolest just outfits and looks.
Looks great.
He has a fucking amazing in-ring performance, not unlike Ricochet and Johnny Gargano and Ciampa. Like he's the whole package for me as a fan, and I want to see more of him now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Immediately. Everywhere. I don't care what show it's on. I want him on all the shows.
Yeah.
I want more of Aleister Black, and I fucking love it.
Yeah, I was saying, I called him Baby Undertaker earlier, and I think he really is the guy that is best positioned to take on that mantle of being the next generation's paranormal guy, somebody that feels like he's coming from another dimension, that there's just something supernatural about him. He just has a presence that is intimidating and terrifying and compelling and interesting and absorbing, and his in-ring performance skills are top-notch. He has the best kicks in the company, for sure, for obvious reasons.
Monstrous kicks.
Love the fade to black finisher. You never know when it's coming, and when it hits,
cool names for his moves too.
Over.
All of his moves have cool names.
The black mass finisher.
Yeah, black mass.
When you get
fade
hit
to
with,
black.
when you get hit with the black mass, then you fade to black.
Just fucking amazing. Just amazing character, amazing performer. Can't wait to see more.
And I just want to stress, as I do on every single show, if you're not watching NXT, start watching NXT. If you found any of this compelling, this is NXT every week. This is the product that they're putting on.
Yep.
We got a showcase of it on Raw and SmackDown. We're probably going to get some more showcasing, but NXT is a phenomenal wrestling product, and you're just seeing a snippet of it here.
To be fair, you're seeing the greatest snippet of it, the top tier snippet of it, but still, you're getting
seeing
a very awesome product from NXT.
You're seeing 10-minute matches from Aleister Black, whereas in NXT at takeovers he's putting on 50-minute matches, and you're seeing some of the best matches that have ever been done. So you're still getting just the taste. You are getting the best talent, but watch NXT. Watch NXT. Watch the takeover events. If you have your WWE Network subscription already for any reason and you're not watching NXT, you are wasting your money. That is where the money is to be used.
Watch those shows for sure.
Great wrestling product.
And one little complaint in my notes from fucking commercials. Come on. Can we stop having commercials in the middle of the best matches?
Yeah, never going to happen.
Put it in the middle of McIntyre squashing Dean Ambrose. Have them fight for 5 minutes instead of 2 minutes, and just put a commercial in the middle. I'm okay with that. Don't put it in the middle of the fucking awesome matches that we're getting from...
They know you'll stick around. That's how they get you.
Will I, though? Will I? Don't test me. I'm very shallow. And then finally...
Fickle!
Exactly. And then finally we had Ruby Riott come out and fight Ronda Rousey. Again, this match was much, much better and gave Ruby Riott a much, much better showing. than Elimination Chamber. And at the end there, Liv Morgan and Sarah Logan go out there to kind of support Ruby Riott, but of course they get their ass kicked, as you would expect. And then they all go limping off the stage. But this match was great, in my opinion, just because they gave Ruby Riott the credit she's due, that she did not get at the pay-per-view, and I think they squandered their opportunity to kind of give her a bigger audience. And because Ronda is kind of back to her badass self, which is what I want to see. So it wasn't the best match out there, and I did like that really there wasn't any cheating going on, even though Liv Morgan and Sarah were out there. Like, usually when they're out there, there's going to be some kind of cheating shenanigans, and something silly is going to happen, and Ruby Riott's either going to get close to winning because of it, or she's going to outright win because of it. But this time, they didn't even let her cheat, and she still put on a great match and looked really competitive and was one of the better parts of the show. So
yeah, when she hit that second Riot kick, I was starting to wonder.
Yeah, it was really cool and really impressive, and I really like that they, depending on whose decision it was, it was cool to see Ronda give her kind of almost like an apologetically good match.
Yeah.
After what we had to watch at the pay-per-view, where Ruby Riott just had to eat the pin and, get squashed right away. So
yeah, kind of made up for that squash for sure. I was of the position that the squash was appropriate because of the competitive nature of the matches that Ronda's had with the top stars, like, 3 of the 4 horsewomen and everything else. But I love Ruby Riott as a worker, and I think she needs to be in a tier above Liv Morgan and Sarah Logan, which she didn't appear to be after getting squashed even faster than Sarah Logan did.
Yeah.
This match was pretty good. I think there's a lot of chemistry there between Ruby Riott and Ronda Rousey. I couldn't help but notice when Ronda jumped off the top turnbuckle that she slipped.
Yeah.
And it looked like, when I was rewatching the video of that moment, and when she was going to the ground, her left leg was just flailing and she didn't know what to do with it. And it looked like she very well could have landed awkwardly, tore an ACL, something like that. But Liv Morgan actually got herself under Ronda's leg and took it all the way to the ground to make sure she didn't get hurt. And this is after Liv had already pushed Riott out of the way, kayfabe, to protect her. So she was reacting to that in real time and probably prevented what could have been a serious injury, which would have derailed the main event of WrestleMania. So props on my girl Liv for total professionalism there.
Yeah.
But yeah, the match was pretty good. I liked it. I think that they work well together. I did hear rumors, again, rumor qualifier, these are just rumors. I did hear rumors that Seth Rollins was expected to be at this show and was not cleared medically, and they didn't know this till the last minute. So they were not done with the script for the show until the show had already started.
Wow.
They were still writing the script 30 minutes into the show. And apparently the plan was to have Alexa Bliss come out and take a squash loss. And instead they decided that something else got shortened because Seth wasn't there and he was supposed to wrestle for a good period of time. So they had some time to fill. So they decided to just throw Ruby out there and give her a redemption match where she would take up a little bit more time instead of Ronda just squashing Alexa Bliss in 2 minutes. So I'm happy about that for 2 reasons, which is that it makes Ruby look better. And it keeps Alexa Bliss from taking a second squash loss to Ronda Rousey. I would not have been happy to see that. I know there are a lot of people that don't like Alexa Bliss among the diehard crowd. She's certainly not one of my favorites because I don't think that her in-ring performance skills are up there.
Yep.
But I do think she is a big star in this company. She's one of the biggest stars in the women's division. She sells a ton of merchandise. She gets great crowd reactions all the time. She's probably the best woman in the company with Becky Lynch on the microphone, and that is a skill that is sorely lacking, as we were talking about before we started recording.
100%.
So she's elite in that category, and so I want her to be someone that you can push into a main event title picture at any time. That cause would not have been served by having her get squashed by Ronda in that situation, especially because she's barely wrestled since she came back from injury, and her last major match was getting squashed by Ronda at SummerSlam. So I'm glad that didn't happen. So I feel bad for Seth that he didn't get cleared, but I'm happy with the way that the apparent changes.
I think it worked out okay. Yeah. So in the end, largely because of the crowd and largely because of a kind of weak opening match with Baron Corbin and Braun Strowman, I gave the show the average of averages 5. Right down the middle. There was enough there to be redeeming. There was enough there to really kind of disappoint you. And the crowd was not doing this show any favors.
No.
I think if the crowd had been into it, you could have easily pushed this to a 6 or a 7.
Yeah.
But just having the kind of just worthless crowd there, not contributing at all to the show. I had to give it just an average 5, right down the middle.
Yeah, the crowd is live crowds are the best thing about professional wrestling, and they can also be the worst thing about professional wrestling when you don't get a good one. I gave it a 4. I think the NXT guys were super entertaining and were the best parts of the show, but they were about 30 minutes out of 3 hours. The other 2.5 hours, nothing really blew me away. It ranged from okay to pretty bad, so I gave it a 4. It's higher than last week.
I don't know if you agree, but for me, I don't know if maybe they were saving their bodies because they knew they were going to be on 2, potentially 3 shows throughout the week. But for me, I think Raw was probably the weakest showing performance-wise of the new NXT guys. They were still great, don't get me wrong, but I think it seemed like they were holding something back. They didn't have quite the same rhythm they had when they went on SmackDown. I think SmackDown, for whatever reason, they seem to have a better rhythm. They seem to be working a little bit better. They seem to be, executing more flashy moves to a higher degree, especially Ricochet. I think Ricochet is the most guilty of this, where it seemed like he was holding something a little back on Raw, and then on SmackDown he was in full Ricochet mode, in full force, doing all the flips and all the crazy moves. And not to say that he wasn't doing great eye-popping crazy moves at Raw, but I think he just pushed it a little bit more on SmackDown than further through the week. So
yeah, I gotta wonder how much nerves play into that when they're making a main roster debut. It's a huge moment for those guys. I gotta wonder how much the crowd's non-reactiveness had to do with it. They may have had to change things, and then also, if it is true that they had to slap together the show at the last minute, that would be a pretty good reason to hold back too, because you weren't really sure what you were doing going into it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it was probably a combination of factors, but the fact that they can still perform that way, especially with the NXT guys who are not used to just showing up and doing a show and finding out what they're doing the day of. NXT is filmed once a month. Yeah. Once a month, they film all the shows for the month.
Especially if they're going to have to travel to 2 or 3 shows in 1 week. That's a lot to ask.
And NXT guys usually aren't wrestling nearly as much as main roster guys. They go to a house show once a week, and then they have their once a month tapings, and they have a lot of time to work on the things that they are doing before they have to go out and do them. So this was a taste for them of having to figure things out the day of. And so you probably saw a little bit of that stuff being held back, but you still saw some pretty high-level wrestling from that.
Yeah, for sure. Next up, we have SmackDown. Boy, was this a fucking show. I was losing my mind on this show. I don't think there was a low point for it for me. So let me check my notes and we'll see. So we opened the show.
I can think of one.
How dare you? I know what you're going to try to say. I won't allow it. So opening the show, we had McMiz coming out. We had this whole apology from The Miz, where he's very much selling the puppy dog. I'm sorry, Daddy. I didn't mean to fail you, blah, blah, blah. And then we had a very nice mic moment from the Usos as they came out and started mocking them, just relentlessly.
The Usos are amazing.
Specifically, The Miz. They just mocked him relentlessly.
Love the Usos.
And then that seems to be what, at least in the character work, pushed McMahon over the edge to say, fuck it, we're doing this again.
Yeah.
Rematch in Cleveland. Let's do it,
He didn't want to throw his weight around, but they pushed him.
Yeah. And it was very cool. It was a very exciting way to start the show. Very nice promo work from everybody involved.
Love seeing the Usos. I want to see the Usos every single week. Thank God they're champions.
And of course, they're having their rematch in the Miz's hometown. So enjoy that. Next up, we had Aleister Black with yet again another just childlike glee, goosebumpy entrance for me that just sent me over the top. I mean, without Bray Wyatt on the show, there really hasn't been anybody kind of filling that kind of supernatural aesthetic that seems to have always been present somewhere in the WWF or WWE, WCW, whatever the case may be. And he's filling that void gloriously. I fucking love it. And this match was awesome because he went up against Andrade, which was, come on now. You couldn't bill a better matchup, for a standard everyday week show.
That was their opening match.
It was fucking phenomenal. And it's now Selena, correct me if I'm wrong, Selena Vega is Aleister's wife, correct?
Yes, they are married in real life.
So that's another thing that was kind of fun and entertaining.
And yet she was aggressively rooting against her husband.
Yes. So that was kind of cool.
Like the true pro that she is.
That was kind of cool to see because he had the kind of like, awkward. Like, is she going to hold back a little because it's in reality her husband?
No, she did not.
She sold 100%.
Total pro.
This is where she got all that weekly anger out on her husband.
Yes.
You know, oh, you didn't take out the trash yesterday, you son of a bitch.
I did dishes twice. You take those double knees.
But yeah, I thought it was crazy that they had Andrade take the pin for Aleister Black, because like the other matches were a push for sure. Having Elias take the pin, okay. You know, having the Revival take the pin for Johnny Gargano and Ciampa, that's significant, but it's still like, okay, I can get with that. Having Andrade, who's been built up with these phenomenal matches with Rey Mysterio, has just been shooting to the sky, you know, with the amount of popularity he's been gaining in these huge matches he's been having with Rey Mysterio, and having him take the pin to me seemed very significant. And I'm like, that's a fucking push. Like, when you have Andrade have a fucking amazing match with Aleister Black, and then have Aleister Black in his SmackDown debut pin Andrade, that's a fucking match. That's a fucking push. And I was very much a fan of this, and I thought it was awesome. Again, this crowd was way better, so that helped too. But I loved it from beginning to end. I thought it was great. Yeah,
I thought it was a really good match. You know, just being the NXT fanboy, you know, I know that Andrade and Aleister Black have had better matches than that. So just comparing against that, you know, it was very, very good compared to most of what you see on the main roster show week to week. It was better than what you see on NXT week to week.
Yeah.
It was a very, very good match. I didn't love Andrade taking the pin. I really, or at least not in that fashion. I would have preferred, you know, maybe Zelina Vega gets involved and you know, distracts Aleister Black, and Andrade takes advantage and hits his hammerlock and gets a win. You know, I like you were saying, he was really starting to recover with his feud with Mysterio. When he had come up to the show originally, he was just taking losses week after week.
Yeah, for
he was
sure.
putting on great matches, and he was taking losses week after week. Then he had finally started to build some momentum, and now they just have him take a clean pin, no problem, even with his manager at ringside. So it didn't make Andrade look great to me. I didn't like derailing the momentum, but at the same time, you know, it's Aleister Black. Nothing to be ashamed of, losing Aleister Black.
Yeah. And clearly they're, again, spoiler, the NXT guys get all the wins. So if there's an NXT guy of the four that are being introduced this week in a match, they won.
Yeah.
So I think fans are a little bit more forgiving in that, with that mindset in place. That, okay, they're giving him the pin because he's got to be pushed now.
Yeah,
I get it.
And I know none of the smarks like me are going to be complaining about NXT stars getting pushes. So
yeah. But really, I was creaming myself. I was like, this is fucking amazing. I had childish glee. I was so giddy. I had the goosebumps going. I loved everything about it. I really enjoyed it. Next up, we had the Bar come out after a little bit of wordplay there. Go up against Ciampa and Gargano after a little promo. They had a little promo where they had the kind of baby faces of I think that was a 6-way match, you know, the tag team match towards the end. They had they had New Day extending the pancake branch to AJ Styles, and who else was on there? Jeff Hardy.
Yes,
Jeff Hardy. Take the pancake branch and apology so they can work together on the main event that night. So that was kind of fun. Just kind of
and then just Xavier Woods just casually holding Big E in his arms like a giant baby.
Yeah, it was great. It was great.
New Day's been around a while, but they're still coming up with stuff every week.
Yeah, gotta love New Day. So that was a fun little promo. And then the Bar and Ciampa and Gargano go up against each other.
Inject this match directly into my veins.
Yeah, it was great. It was an awesome match.
Oh my goodness.
I am normally not a big Ciampa guy. Like I like his gimmick that he just desires the belt and he just wants to hoard the belt.
Goldie.
He's, for our comic book fans out there, he's basically like Larfleeze. Now Larfleeze is the orange lantern, a greed lantern. He's the only lantern that carries the orange ring because he won't allow anybody to have the orange ring, and he's just obsessed with making everything his, and everything's mine, mine, and that's all he says, mine.
Got a little Smeagol in him too, for the Lord of the Rings fans.
Yeah, and that is who Ciampa is to me, and I enjoy that kind of dynamic. But in the ring, as great as he is, for some reason, something just hasn't clicked for me personally. And this match, I was like, okay, this is pretty good. I can follow this guy, and we'll see how it goes going forward. I like the kind of tag team dynamic they got with Gargano, coming to the main roster and whatnot. But honestly, I think I'd rather see Gargano by himself because I do like Gargano quite a bit. As much crap as I give him for being so Cleveland, he's so Cleveland.
Cleveland hater over here.
Yeah,
yet he loves the Miz.
I'm a Cincy guy, so but it was just, I don't know. I just feel like both characters could shine a little bit more separate. But you may disagree. You've been watching them a lot longer than I have. So.
I think I'm conflicted about them being together. On the one hand, I love them being together because they became famous as a tag team. DIY is one of the most popular tag teams in the history of NXT. It's one of the best tag teams in the history of NXT. They work really well together. They've got a lot of chemistry, but at the same time, they've spent the past year feuding with each other because Ciampa turned on Gargano, and they've had one of the best rivalries going in the company for the past year, and now all of a sudden they're just buddies again, and they're teaming up with no explanation whatsoever. They did not say that there was a reason for them to be friendly, let alone tagging together and getting along. I don't know. The lack of continuity between their NXT storylines and what they're doing on the main roster right now doesn't really add up to me, and I don't like the fact that they just slapped them together with no explanation. But I really like them as a tag team. I do love Johnny Wrestling, and I think that he has the potential to be one of the top guys in the company. He's phenomenal in the ring. He's very good on the mic. He's really lacking in nothing. He's got a catchy nickname. He's got a catchy theme song. He's got a variety of theme songs to work with, actually, that he's developed over the years. So he's got it all. I like seeing DIY wrestle together because it is such a fun spectacle, but for storyline purposes, I don't really get it.
Yeah,
and I wish they would explain something.
Yeah.
But this match was the best match of the week on either show for me.
Wow. High praise.
Oh my goodness. I couldn't get enough of it. I wanted them to keep going forever. I love the Bar as a tag team. I have loved the Bar for a while. You remember when we went to Starrcade, I was pretty much the only one cheering for the Bar.
yeah, that's true.
I love the Bar. I think that Cesaro specifically is one of the most underrated wrestlers in the company. He's so good. He can do so many things.
Yeah, very good.
Such a high level.
Super strong too.
Yeah,
God damn,
powerful guy.
He's probably stronger than Sheamus.
Yeah, he's
even though Sheamus is the big guy.
Yeah,
like
Cesaro is one of those.
Cesaro is fucking strong.
Cesaro shows what the difference is between being muscular and being strong because he is just strong. I mean, I could have watched these two teams go at it forever. Like I said, I love this match. This match it stole both shows for me. So I like seeing DIY together, but for storyline purposes, I don't get it. So I'm interested to see if they're going to either explain why they're getting along now, or if they're going to break them back apart. I don't know.
We'll see.
They seem to be kind of warming to each other. I mean, we're going to get into the NXT results. They seem to kind of be warming to each other on NXT lately, or at least Ciampa is trying to kind of re-establish some kind of relationship with Gargano, and Gargano is kind of stiff-arming him, but not in a really hostile way. So I guess there's a tepid alliance going on, but yeah, I didn't like how suddenly they were just slapped together this week after a year of having the best rivalry in the company.
Yeah, it was a little strange. We'll see. I thought the match was great, don't get me wrong, but just because of that dynamic that you were talking about, where it's just that doesn't seem to make sense, that pulled me out just enough for it just not to be that over the top for me.
Yeah, it's just like Rusev and Nakamura. Yeah. Like they just all of a sudden they're just buddies and they're tagging together like with no explanation. Just a week ago you were attacking him in the back and hurting his wife and blaming him, and now all of a sudden you're tagging and you're fine. Like,
that's a perfect analogy. That's exactly the feeling I got watching them wrestle together. And again, I haven't been watching them as long as you have. You saw them in their full DIY days, so you know what it was like. I didn't really see that as much. So I've seen little clips of it. That's about it. I don't have any emotional investment in it. And when it was on the stage, I was just like, I don't know if this works very well. Maybe it was just because they needed to condense time, having 4 guys take a pin for the new, having 4 guys that need to have somebody take a pin for them to push them as the new faces of, SmackDown, Raw, what have you. Okay, I get it. You've got kind of a time crunch if you got to do it on both Raw and SmackDown and fit these guys in. So let's make one of them a tag team so we don't have to, have quite as many, predictable pin matches just to push these guys, and we can kind of spread ourselves out a little bit.
But it's definitely made them warm themselves to each other way too quick. And just one further complaint I had about Raw, by the way, which I forgot to mention. Michael Cole, please watch some NXT once in a while, for goodness sakes. He did not know the names of their moves.
Yeah.
Johnny Gargano hit 2 slingshot DDTs, hit a slingshot spear, and attempted another slingshot spear against the Revival. Michael Cole did not use the word slingshot one time, with 4 opportunities to do so with Johnny Gargano's signature moves.
Yeah,
Please watch some NXT,
Not
Michael
a good
Cole.
sign. Now, you know who you should put on that show? McAfee.
I can think of somebody.
McAfee. Put McAfee on the show. Make him the new main roster announcer with fucking Corey.
Well, see, that's the problem, is you already got Corey. They're
But
both color guys.
You can have the negative color guy and the positive
yes, that's
color
true.
guy. Pat McAfee is the
But
positive color guy.
what are we going to do without Shut Up, Byron? You would miss that.
That is pretty entertaining. But yeah, I love Pat McAfee. I hope they push him to the main show. I fucking love Pat McAfee.
More reason to start watching NXT, guys.
For the brand.
If you like Pat McAfee, again, NXT. That's
For
where
the-
he's at.
For the brand, cuzzo. All right. Next up, we had an Asuka sighting. Get hyped. Get hyped.
At first.
Yeah, I thought it was good. Basically, she has this match against Mandy Rose. It's not for a title shot or anything. It's just a match. So I was glad that at least we got to see Asuka on the main show, because let's face it, we haven't fucking seen her in forever. And if you watched our last episode, it was our topic of the show because we hadn't fucking seen her. I'm a big Asuka fan. She's my favorite of the female wrestlers. And I thought it was a pretty solid match, including from Mandy Rose. I thought she actually put on a pretty good match with Asuka there. I thought this was probably the best mic work Asuka has had. Now, let's face it.
Asuka on the mic.
Asuka is a little limited because she's very Japanese, and she, throughout the match, shouts Japanese gibberish at her opponent because she doesn't speak English that well.
It's not gibberish. It's Japanese.
But you don't know. It probably is gibberish.
I cannot verify.
But she actually had some nice, interesting mockery on the mic and was just calling out for anybody, come fight me right now. And it was fun. It was cool.
No one is ready.
And even though I think she's probably aware that she has a flawed English accent and a limited vocabulary, she sells into it so hard that you can't help but enjoy it, and you can't help but buy into it and kind of play along. Whereas if she was just trying to use a normal voice with that heavy accent, you'd probably be like, oh, this is stupid, this sucks. But she sells into it so hard. She's just shouting at the top of her lungs, just, come on! And it's great. I loved it. Corey Graves is undefeated. That was my biggest note from this match. Corey Graves, his little love fest with Mandy Rose,
God's greatest creation.
It's fucking amazing.
According to Corey,
it cracks me up every time. I love it. And then we had another what the fuck appearance from Lacey Evans. They did this at the pay-per-view.
I want to talk about Asuka for a minute here before we move on.
This was in the match.
No, this was after. That was when she came out with Heavy Machinery and they had the catwalk off.
Not on this show, I don't think. She just literally walked out in the middle of the match. Lacey,
oh yeah, that's right, she did. Okay,
her music just came on randomly.
Yeah, that's right.
And Lacey Evans walks out in her little outfit, waves to the crowd, and then immediately turns around,
once again,
with Asuka just staring at her like, what?
Yeah, once again.
Why are you here? Mandy Rose just looking at her like, what?
Yeah.
Why are you here? And she just turns around and walks off.
That's her
and
thing now.
It's not funny.
It's not a thing.
It's not funny. It's not interesting. It's not contributing everything.
What is the point?
Why? Just no. It's a waste of fucking time. If you're gonna have a fucking commercial break, do it during that stupid shit.
Yeah.
I don't like it. I hate Lacey Evans. I have no idea what Lacey Evans
Just
does.
the non-entrances have made him hate Lacey Evans already.
It really has. Genuinely, it has made me hate this character. I don't care what she does from here on out. I don't care how good of a wrestler she is. I don't want to see her anymore.
Not very good.
I don't want to see her. Period.
Yeah.
Especially not on the main shows.
I'm not a Lacey Evans guy.
Get the fuck
out
of here. Get the fuck out of here.
Making her even worse.
It's and it pisses me off because once again, they don't know what to do with Asuka, and they're interrupting her few appearances on live TV with fucking Lacey Evans.
Yeah.
Go fuck yourselves. So that was my biggest negative point is Lacey Evans' appearance. And then they gave Mandy Rose a pin, which I was not about. But again, it wasn't a title defense, so it doesn't matter anything. But obviously, it might get into Asuka's head going forward for a potential storyline. So maybe we have something to do with Asuka now.
Yeah.
We'll see.
I guess. I hated the finish.
It was a really bullshit.
After what we already had with Asuka with Carmella over the summer, where James Ellsworth and Shark Cages got involved in making sure that Carmella beat Asuka twice for the SmackDown Women's title, and now you have Mandy Rose. Asuka is becoming the Wile E. Coyote of the women's division, and it's ridiculous. I mean, she just gets fooled by the most juvenile, nonsensical, telegraphed, easy to see, heelish cheat maneuvers.
It was a really
She
stupid
looks
pin.
ridiculous. Asuka looks ridiculous right now. She wasn't on TV for a month, and then once again, she got the Wile E. Coyote treatment, which she already got from plenty of other blondes already in the past year.
Yep.
And now they're doing it to her again. So
Thanks, Vince.
I just I don't get what they're doing with Asuka. And again, we talked about this last week. They keep putting belts on people without a plan, and it's very obvious that they did it with Asuka here. They didn't have a plan for her for a month, and then she comes back and she gets fooled and gets roll-up pinned by Mandy freaking Rose.
It was not great. It was not a great end.
That was the very worst part of the show for me was this whole thing.
If you take out the pin, which was really horrendous, I will admit that was a very strong weak point.
And it was an asinine setup, too.
And the Lacey Evans interruption. If you take those two out, it was a pretty solid match. And I actually enjoyed Asuka's mic work leading into the match.
Yeah.
But I think...
Asuka can pull a 3-star match out of a used napkin. So.
I think the unfortunate end result is that you only remember the negative feeling from the shitty ending and the interruption towards the end of the match. Like, unfortunately, that's what you're left with. It's not like, when you go to see a movie, more often than not, it's the ending that's going to dictate how much you love that movie.
Yeah. Have you seen The Village? Okay.
Yep. So, the whole first and second half could be great, but if the ending is just complete garbage, you're going to leave with those negative feelings, not with the positive feelings you initially entered
really
with.
Sour taste in my mouth. Hate how they're treating Asuka. Was so excited to see her, and then they give her some stuff like that I did not appreciate.
Yep.
So that left a really sour taste in my mouth in what was otherwise a really, really good show.
Yep. Next up, we had Ricochet's appearance on SmackDown, where he went up against Sanity's Eric Young for reasons.
I forgot he existed.
Yep. Ricochet was awesome. Eric Young was fine.
He was fine. Fine.
It was a match.
It happened.
It was entertaining because Ricochet was doing all of his usual flips, and he actually looked like he was on time for everything, which he didn't feel or look that way quite as much on Raw. It was a solid match. It was fun. Ricochet wins, of course, and that was it.
It was fine. It existed.
Yep.
Aggressively.
And then, of course, we got plenty of Kofi love as he was brought into the ring.
Kofi Mania is running wild, brother.
The tag team matchup. We had the 3-man tag team matchup between basically the baby faces and the heels from the main event there. So you had kind of an interesting dynamic where Randy Orton, Samoa Joe, and Daniel Bryan were kind of like obviously clearly not allied as much as they needed to be, and were very much at odds throughout the introduction and through the match. And then you had the Pancake Branch extended friendship between Jeff Hardy, AJ Styles, and Kofi Kingston there. Notes, Daniel Bryan remains just fucking phenomenal on the mic. His dialogues, his rants are just so top tier A-lister, like just so fucking pure and great. I love everything about the new Daniel Bryan. Again, famously, between me and Dan, I was not about the new Daniel Bryan angle. I was like, this is dumb. Like, he's clearly a babyface, has been a babyface for forever. I don't want to see him play a villain. He's the yes guy. He's the positive guy that can overcome anything. That's who he is. I was completely wrong. My instincts were completely off on this one. Dan was completely right. Yeah. It's been nothing but greatness ever since.
I knew it was special the second I saw it.
It's only gotten better and better and better. It started as just this raving madman that hated AJ Styles, and it's progressed into this movement for the planet, and he's thrown away the traditional WWE Championship belt and replaced it with a completely renewable sourced belt.
Not to mention that glorious recycling sign Titantron.
Oh my god, it's so so good.
Such a nice touch.
And now he started kind of a cult with Rowan, and it's just everything about it is awesome.
Yeah.
And I fucking
Fantastic.
love it.
Fantastic
Daniel Bryan,
work.
once again, making a great mic appearance.
Fantastic
just
work.
having an awesome time. It must be fun for him. It has to be fun.
Yeah. He's having a great time.
He must be having the time of his life.
I mean, you can feel it.
And then I just wanted to say at the end there, every time a trombone plays, a Kofi gets his pin.
It is the harbinger.
That was my biggest note there. And this is the second time Kofi has pinned Daniel Bryan in 2 weeks. That's pretty interesting, especially if you're thinking about making a push for Kofi to get the belt and take it away from Daniel Bryan.
Very interesting.
Let's face it, Kofi's been the only one to pin him
Yeah,
these past 2 weeks.
he sure has. Nobody
So
else has pinned him.
maybe a little foreshadowing there. I'm sure Daniel Bryan doesn't appreciate that. He's beaten pretty much everybody else, but for some reason, Kofi's just got his number.
Yeah. Yeah, and Kofi will be getting the title shot at Fastlane, as they announced at the very end after Kofi scored yet another pin. So he's going to get his opportunity. It'll be interesting. That should be a really fun match. Those two obviously have tons of chemistry. Their performances against each other, especially in the Elimination Chamber being the last two, was just unbelievable, eye-popping stuff. It'll be interesting to see the dynamic with Big E and Xavier Woods at ringside, with Rowan on the other side. You know, who knows what's going to happen there. Apparently on SmackDown next week, there will be a contract signing between those two. So that should get very interesting.
Very nice.
This match was good. The 6-man tag dynamic is not my favorite thing, but it was fine. It was a good match. Kofi Mania running wild once again, this time in New Orleans.
Yep.
So it was a good match. And for the show overall, I gave it an 8.0. I thought everything was really, really good. I just hated the Asuka segment so much. So I hated it. I hated it so aggressively. It took 2 full points off my score.
Yep.
So it went down 2 letter grades
Now,
because of that treatment of her.
I don't blame you at all. I'm totally in your camp as far as that being a terrible ending for that match.
If it was a one-time thing, that's one thing. But we saw this with Carmella twice already at 2 separate pay-per-views, and now Mandy Rose is doing it.
Yep, absolutely.
I just can't take Asuka looking so stupid anymore.
However, all that being said, I'm going to go out on a strong limb here. I'm going to give this a 10.
A 10?
A 10.
A perfect 10?
I was entertained from beginning to end. I had fun the entire show.
He's just got Ty Dillinger on his mind. That's why he's going with the perfect 10.
Ty Dillinger, yeah, I'm sure. No, I didn't see a single match that I didn't enjoy, at least at some point. Asuka's, I enjoyed the match itself, the actual match leading up to that final ending that was terrible. Everything about that match I liked until that final pin where the little, jokerish trick. Oh, look over here. Gotcha, dummy.
Wile E. Coyote.
But of course, Corey Graves was making that match even better. The crowd was really solid all through the show. Aleister Black just gives me those giddy kid feelings again, where I'm just getting excited to watch wrestling again. I want to turn on wrestling now because I want to watch Aleister Black do his thing on the main shows against the main roster. I was super hyped. I love seeing Andrade on the show. I love seeing McMiz at the beginning. I love the great mic work from the Usos to start the show. We had a really cool star-studded match to end the show with the 3-way tag team match there. It was just great. I really love it. And we're really finally kind of pushing Kofi to the next level and kind of capitalizing again, like we were talking about during the pay-per-view. And they're actually continuing with the storyline and really showing that, hey, he's a threat by pinning Daniel Bryan a second time in 2 weeks.
Yeah, love what they're doing with him.
It's Ricochet had a great showing, performance-wise in the ring there. Ciampa and Gargano against the Bar was a great match, outstanding match. Don't know about the tag team dynamic, but it was a really good match.
So good. I need more.
They're really, looking at my notes, there really isn't a weak point of the show that was so significant for me that I could dock at a point. It's what I would want from your everyday weekly show. As far as weekly shows, not pay-per-views, but weekly shows go, it doesn't get much better than this for me. So I give it a 10.
Well done, SmackDown. Killed it again.
Which is, I mean, if we took our averages for all the shows, clearly, SmackDown's at the top there. SmackDown's been phenomenal.
Yeah. Although NXT is right up there, which is my segue into our NXT results. So NXT, really good this week, as usual. It opened with your boy, Aleister Black.
Oh, yeah.
Defeating Roderick Strong of Undisputed Era. This
Yep.
was a really physical match. These guys are both hard strikers. If you like hard strikes, you need to go watch this match.
And there was some nasty chest chops in this match, like fucking nasty from Strong.
Yeah, Strong.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, his name is Strong for good reason. He is a strong style type wrestler. He hits hard.
It's a good thing that Aleister Black has a lot of tattoos because I think he would be like Dan O'Brien and that his welts and everything would just show everywhere. And you could still see some of them where he doesn't have tattoos.
Especially as a Dutchman.
They look fucking nasty.
Yeah.
Nasty.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Roderick Strong was really selling those chest chops. And then, of course, Aleister Black had some nasty kicks,
those
too.
kicks. Yeah, those two were just beating the hell out of each other. And that's a really fun matchup between those two. This is a pretty good, solid match.
Yeah.
Really good opening match for NXT.
And that's after a week of two really back-to-back, like, over-the-top nasty matches that he had just done. So, like, shout out to Aleister Black. He put on a show all week long.
Yes.
It was fucking great.
Very strong week for him. I've been saying it more and more. I am starting to get a little concerned about Undisputed Era. They've been racking up the losses lately. So, hopefully at some point in the near future, they can start getting some wins and get some of their luster back.
Well, let's face it. 4 guys are no longer a problem for the most part. So there's some space to be filled. And then we had a little bit of the rest of the Undisputed Era come out to try to attack him, try to get some, revenge, I guess. And then Ricochet comes out to save him and help him in the end. And that makes a nice little friendly dynamic between Aleister Black and Ricochet, which were my favorite NXT guys, who are now main roster guys.
Perhaps.
We'll see. We'll see.
Right now, they're dual brand, which I'm totally cool with. Actually, not dual brand. What's the 3 version of dual? Whatever that is, they are triple brand superstars.
Menage a trois, I don't know, something like that. And then next up, I don't know if you saw any other matches other than this, but it looked like it was just Mia Yim versus Xia Li for the middle of the show.
Although right before that, the big announcement that was sold on WWE.com all week, the Dusty Rhodes Classic is coming back this year. So that's the tag team tournament. The winner gets the number 1 contendership against War Raiders. So I believe the declared teams, the named teams so far are Street Profits, Undisputed Era, European Union, and Forgotten Sons. So keep an eye out for that in the next couple weeks.
For sure.
I think they're starting their first round next week.
Yep. So Mia Yim versus Xia Li, what'd you think?
It was all right. Xia Li is very, very green and very new. She obviously has that martial arts background that shows very strongly. She's somebody that seems to take this very seriously. This felt a little bit like just getting one of the newbies an opportunity to go out there and work for a few minutes with someone who's a veteran in Mia Yim. I really like Mia Yim. I like her style. She's a Taekwondo black belt, and it really shows in how she
had a cool
wrestles.
entrance. Yeah.
I like Mia Yim. I like Xia Li. I think that she has a lot of potential. First Chinese wrestler ever, as far as being from China. So I like the potential with Xia Li. This match was just okay for me, but when you grade on a curve because of the fact that she is so new, it was a really good showing. So interested to see where Xia Li goes, and good to see Mia Yim on TV for a second straight week.
Yeah, for me, it was the weakest point of the show. Which isn't saying a lot because the opening and ending were both pretty solid, pretty great. But it was just it was slow. Like there was some nice stuff at the end there, but I think the first 2/3 of the match were just a slog for me.
Yeah.
I was bored out of my mind for a while there.
Yeah, you could tell Xia Li is new and is still learning how to be a little more fluid in the ring and how to do those transitions and things. So you could tell this was kind of a learning moment for her.
Yep.
But for how new she is, it was serviceable.
And then, please correct me if I missed anything, we had the final event, which is Velveteen Dream versus Johnny Gargano for the North American belt.
Yeah, right. Well, although right after the Mia Yim and Xia Li match, 3 of the 4 horsewomen once again came out. Jessamine Duke, Marina Shafir, and Shayna Baszler cleared the ring. Baszler put a beat down on Mia Yim specifically. So next week, it will be Mia Yim versus Shayna Baszler. That should be a pretty entertaining match to watch if you like watching really tough chicks beat the hell out of each other.
Yeah, for sure. So Velveteen Dream versus Johnny Gargano for the North American belt. We had a lot of taunting initially from Velveteen Dream, which is great to watch. The match seemed to feature a ton of technical stuff. It was a very technical heavy
Johnny Wrestling.
grappling
Johnny
match,
Wrestling, baby.
as you would expect. It was a lot of fun to watch. You know, I love Velveteen Dream. I think he has the best name in all of wrestling. His character is just something that another one of those kind of like sultry, classic, you know, almost like Shaft-like characters, like somewhere between Prince and Shaft.
It's got some Gorgeous George in there.
Yeah.
Ravishing Rick Rude.
Absolutely.
He's a student of the game, and it really shows.
Yeah, and that's something that the mainstream WWE doesn't seem to have right now. You know, kind of like the late career Ric Flair, something like that. Maybe Gold Dust a little bit. You know,
where is all the vanity?
Somewhere in there, you know. We just don't seem to have that anymore. And
true.
I think Velveteen Dream might be the next addition to that kind of pantheon of
Yeah.
over-the-top vain characters.
Yeah, he's not lacking in anything. He's got a ton of talent. His character work is next level. You know, he's a guy that really studies and loves wrestling, and he's aware of all the things that people used to do back in the 70s and 80s and the NWA and everything else. So, he's the complete package. He's only 23, so he's got a lot of growth left ahead of him, and yet he's already in a really good place. And it seems like the rocket has been strapped to him a little bit already. He won the Worlds Collide tournament. He's been on a hot streak lately, and this was just another feather in his cap for 2019. Yeah,
it was excellent. And the end result of the match, after a few very, very late kickouts, I noticed. I was like, man, that ref was holding his hand that extra second there. Very, very last minute kickouts that were, of course, exciting. Johnny Gargano has gone down. He has been defeated by the Velveteen Dream. May he rest in peace.
Boo.
On the main roster.
I did think it was a great match. I really enjoyed the fact that they started with all the technical stuff, because that's really where Johnny Wrestling has the advantage over Dream, the young rookie. You got this veteran guy who's really technically proficient, and he was really showing that off and dominating the match for a while there.
Yeah.
And I really like that, and the mind games that were going on before Dream was able to turn it around, starting with the bitch slap from hell that's reverberated throughout Full Sail University.
I gotta say that through this whole episode of NXT, there was some fucking savage slaps going on.
Yeah, they strike
like
hard in NXT.
The chest chops and the slaps and fuck.
Yeah, if you like hard strikes, NXT is going to be your style. There's a lot of high spots and a lot of hard strikes. That's really their style of wrestling. But yeah, this match was just awesome. The story that they told was awesome. You know, Johnny Wrestling was clearly the ring general involved, and Velveteen Dream just was put in a position to allow his personality to shine through and show off some of his athleticism and the talent that he has. You know, he's still got more growth to do in the ring. His character work is already elite.
Yeah, it's great.
So it was great to see him get his first championship. I am a little bummed out that Johnny Wrestling didn't get a single successful title defense. I'm a little bummed out that we just got the Johnny Champion nickname like 2 weeks ago, and now he's not champion anymore. So I'm hoping maybe this is a sign that he's on his way to the main roster on a more full-time basis, which would be super awesome. But I'm a little bummed that he lost his first title defense.
Well, again, as a guy who doesn't watch NXT every single week just because of time, I thought it was probably the best way forward. I think one by one, we're going to see these titles leave the new four guys. You know, really only Ciampa and Johnny Gargano have titles right now, right? But now that Johnny Gargano has lost his to basically the top tier of the NXT now, which is Velveteen Dream, I think Ciampa's going to be next in line to lose his title to somebody significant, you know, that isn't part of those four guys that have traditionally been fighting for the championships, at least in recent times, you know, with Adam Cole and, you know, a few others.
Yeah, Andrade came up last year, so he was one of the guys that was always in that championship picture. I'd be interested to see who they put in the championship picture if they are to bring all those four guys up to the main roster.
Yeah.
I think it's unlikely that they're going to bring all four of them up too close together. I think that right now they're kind of showcasing all of them, maybe trying to give a shot in the arm to the main shows with some of the rating struggles that they've had. I think they would really be putting NXT in a bad position if they took all four of them at once. So maybe they'll just kind of come up in waves while they're building up other people behind them. You know, Johnny Wrestling seems to me, like I was saying earlier, I think he's the kind of guy that you make your franchise player. So I think that he's a guy that can come up at any time. Maybe they're taking the title off of him so they can move him up, and then they can slowly start to move the other people too.
Yep.
I'm not sure who I would put as a credible challenger to Ciampa at the moment is the problem. If you get rid of all of those guys, and now you have Dream is going to be the North American champion, presumably through the WrestleMania season. We're going to have to see what kind of challenger emerges for Ciampa. I'm not sure if his business with Johnny Gargano is done, because at the end of this match, you saw Ciampa was watching on the screen, paying very close attention and obviously being a very interested party. So we're not sure if their business is done with either. So I'm not really sure where they're going with Ciampa or with that championship, but they've got TakeOver coming up in WrestleMania weekend, so they got to find an opponent for Ciampa by then, and maybe that'll be the guy that takes the title off him.
I have no reason for believing this beyond my own personal speculation, but I think what's going to eventually happen is they're just going to slowly work in a way for Ciampa to lose his title to somebody who's maybe an up-and-comer in NXT, or somebody who's a really hard hitter. And slowly but surely, we'll start to see each of the four kind of dedicate themselves more and more to one of the two shows, whether it be SmackDown or Raw, and just wherever they're getting the bigger pool. And then once we hit, WrestleMania and the Superstar shakeup, I think that's when we're going to have official new branding for these people, I think. And I don't think they'll be touching NXT much anymore beyond the, casual, once in a while visit, like, Finn Balor still does from time to time with the UK show, and a few others. So,
hopefully Boston Hug will be dropping in real soon.
Perhaps.
Please make it happen.
But I think the as you said, the big problem with this is it just leaves a big void in the NXT world, that you took the very cream of the crop and just tossed them into the main roster, as they deserve to be. But now you have this big hole to fill that Velveteen Dream is up there for sure. Adam Cole, War Raiders, I guess. Who else can really fill those spots for the men in the NXT world, Yeah,
I mean, if you take away Ricochet and Aleister Black, you just don't really have any top-level baby faces left at the moment that I would put into the NXT title picture, especially with Dream now committed to the North American Championship, like I said, probably through WrestleMania season. So, yeah, I think they would be in a really tough position if they took all four of those guys. I'm in favor of doing some of this crossover stuff and showcasing them on the main roster and eventually phasing them in. But I just don't think you can take all four of those guys at once. I think you gotta take it real slow and allow some other folks to get built up over the next couple months while you phase those guys in. There's no one that really comes to mind immediately that I think could be a credible babyface challenger to Ciampa right now if it's not Black and it's not Ricochet.
Yeah, I agree that there clearly isn't somebody to point to come and challenge him for the belt, but I think you also can't have this situation where you have these part-timers basically hopping between 2 or 3 shows every single week, for the long term. Something's got to give. At some point, they got to flip over. They got to commit to the new shows, whether they like it or not, And it might be an awkward transition. It might be a, pull off the Band-Aid real fast type of thing where they just rip it off and say, here, someone else got it now. We'll go forward now. I don't know. I honestly, I think the best solution is probably just to tear off the Band-Aid and get it over with, because it's clearly going to happen. It has to happen. And it'd be nice to have that extra star power for WrestleMania, to have these really top-tier elite talents inside the ring, up against the main roster at WrestleMania.
Yeah, and I mean, this is a conflict that they're always going to run into, which is NXT still developmental or is NXT its own brand? Because that is the question that they're going to have to keep wrestling with. It's always been treated as developmental. It's always been, considered this is where we're just bringing talent up and developing them so we can move them to the main roster. That's what it exists for.
Yeah.
But the fact that it has become such a consistently good product, the fact that there is such a large segment of the audience that believes that its creative direction is better than the main roster, that thinks its in-ring product is better than the main roster, which I would agree with wholeheartedly, it has kind of made a name for itself as an independent brand. So if it's that, then it's not going to be so easy to clean the cupboard out in this way. So, we'll see how they handle it.
And that could be a great topic for a future discussion. I mean, they got a few big things working for them. Their fans are the most dedicated of the most dedicated. They know the most, they are not quite the filthy casual that I am sometimes. They are 100% all in, know every single character and every single show.
Very smart crowd.
And know every single chant, know the history, you know the New Japan stuff for the guys that convert over. Like, they know every single detail about these wrestlers and these performers. So that helps quite a bit when the crowd is 100% educated and into what you're giving them. Second thing is the show is a lot shorter. So really, even if you do have a weak point in the show, it's not going to last quite as long because you got to get to the main event. You know, you just don't have that time. Like, Raw is probably too long. I think you talked about that on last episode.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's just too long. They don't have the storylines they need to fill that huge time slot, you know, and I think NXT doesn't have that problem. Yeah. So they are able to kind of showcase the best of the best more often with a better rhythm throughout the show. They don't have those long stretches of boredom like you occasionally have, especially recently with Raw.
And they're able to cycle talent in and out week to week, too, which is something Raw and SmackDown don't do. I think part of the reason that creative keeps tying themselves into knots is that they feel like they have to put everyone on TV every week on Raw and SmackDown, whereas NXT, you'll see Kairi Sane wrestle a match and advance her story one week, and then you won't see her for a couple of weeks. And then the next week, they're going to feature, Shayna Baszler, or they're going to feature Velveteen Dream, and then you won't see him for a week or two. Yeah. And so they're able to continually keep it fresh, let everybody come in and have their spot, when it's appropriate for them to do that to advance a story. And then they're not tied down where we got to think of something for Rusev and Shinsuke Nakamura to do, so we'll just throw them into a tag team for no reason. So that's part of the problem too. Maybe if they just accepted that not everyone's going to be on TV every week, then they would give themselves more leeway, but then it's harder to fill the time. So
that's true. And you got to wonder if this also contributes to the physical performance in the ring. The fact that the main roster guys are doing one, if not two main shows every week, and then probably an in-house show every other week. That's a lot of road trips. There's a lot of wear and tear on the body. That's a lot of constant performance, especially if you're a top-tier character who's always in the main event and is always in these 30 to 40-minute matches at the end of the show. Seth Rollins looking at you, AJ Styles, Daniel Bryan, like these guys are every week, the main event, sacrificing their bodies for 30, 40 minutes plus. The NXT guys, they get a little bit of a break, at least between the main televised shows that go onto the WWE app and what app.
They have their monthly tapings, and then they sprinkle in some house shows, but they get time to rest. They get time to think creatively about what they want to do in their big matches. Whereas, the main roster, the mainstays are wrestling 300 days a year.
And I think that's a big reason why we see so much more flashy stuff in NXT. I think it's just because their bodies are far more well rested and recovered than, say, the main roster guys who are always battling through injuries to put on a good show. And I think a lot of the guys, especially as they get older, just slow down more and more and more, not only because of age, but because they've been doing this constantly without any significant break for extended periods of time to maintain that superstar status, to maintain their kind of form in the public eye. Unless you're the top tier, legendary wrestlers like The Rock or Stone Cold or, Hulk Hogan, Ric Flair, blah, 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 you're probably going to be forgotten about if you leave the show for any extended period of time. And then when you come back, you're going to have to regain all of that goodwill and popularity that you once had when you were on your main role on the main show of WWE. And I think maybe having slightly more breaks for each of these people so that the other stars can get their time to shine and so that they can recover is probably a good idea going forward. Instead of having these people on the show every single week, maybe have some kind of rotation where they're, on 1 week, off the next week, on 2 weeks, off the next 2 weeks, and then repeat, rinse and repeat. And then it just fluctuates based on what the storylines are and where the characters are, so that these performers can have well-rested bodies that are less likely to be injured and that are more likely to be able to give you their all on the televised show. So,
and you can have longer matches. I mean, most of the NXT matches of the year, you're talking about 40, 50-minute matches, and those just don't happen on the main roster, and that's because they can't when you're wrestling 300 times a year.
That's true. Yep. So, end result, since I actually watched the show this week, I got a nice rating for you.
All right.
I gave it a 7. I thought it was really good, especially at the beginning, and really good at the end. I think the middle was what hurt it a little bit. I think it was just a little bit of a slog, a little bit slow. It wasn't terrible, just wasn't as entertaining as it probably should have been or could have been.
Yeah.
And it was just kind of there to fill some time. So I knocked it down a few points, but I give it a 7 overall. Really good showing, really solid, really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I gave it an 8.0. I was really happy with the opening match between Strong and Black. Just those styles with the hard strikes really made for a physical, grueling, painful to watch contest, which is awesome.
Which is something you don't see very often anymore, especially in the kind of PG WWE that it now is, as opposed to like when we were kids and younger teenagers watching the kind of Attitude Era bleeding into the new era. It's where you had the constant head strikes and the razors cutting the blood, and so like they made it as physically grueling looking as possible because that was kind of the mantra of the era. Whereas now you don't see that as much with the whole PG thing. They're not hitting you in the head, which is probably a good thing.
Yeah, that part's good.
They're not cutting themselves constantly, which is probably a good thing. But it lacks that kind of I want to say ferocity, that kind of
there's an edge that's missing.
Little nasty edge that
the kendo stick just doesn't do it for me.
Yeah, it's true. And I think when you get those guys that are really good at delivering those savage strikes like Strong and Black were, that was like that gave it that extra edge that it needed.
Feels like a fight.
It
feels like a fight when you got those two guys going. Yeah, and that's the kind of thing. That's just another kind of thing that I love about NXT is that it does have that little bit of extra juice to it.
Yeah,
and I agree. The middle match was just kind of filler material. I think again it was just getting Xia Li some experience. I think she's progressing well, but she's still filler match material right now. Dream Gargano just fantastic. I mean. I can't get enough of Johnny Wrestling. What can I say? I got 3 straight days of Johnny Wrestling, and I want a lot more because everything he does is so fluid and so technical and so clean. And I'm just a big fan of the guy. And of course, Velveteen Dream is a star in the making. So those two guys brought the house down for me. So 8.0.
Yeah, very good. And I did not get around to watching NXT UK, so why don't you run us through it?
Sure. So it opened with the Coffey Brothers taking on Mark Andrews and Flash Morgan Webster. Pretty solid match. Not as good as I thought it could have been with the caliber of the competitors involved. It seemed like the Coffey Brothers weren't entirely into it. Of course, this was pre-taped during Royal Rumble weekend in Phoenix, so they were in front of a small American crowd that seemed to have various levels of recognition with the product. I really like Mark Andrews. This is probably the second time in 3 weeks that he's really impressed me in the ring. He's another one of those just little athletic guys that can just do all kinds of stuff. So that match was okay, but it wasn't great, and it certainly wasn't as good as I thought it could have been. Then we got to see Trent Seven in action for the first time in a few weeks, going against Shane Thorne. Again, you just have Trent Seven, the old grizzled veteran who's got a little bit of punch going for him, taking on the younger Shane Thorne, who is just the worst. That is his gimmick. He is just the worst. Pretty good match. Little old school feel to it. There wasn't a lot of flying around, not a lot of high spots. There was a good amount of technical stuff. It was, it had a carny feel to it, so it was kind of old-fashioned if you like that kind of thing, which I do, which is why I love the Revival. It was pretty good, so solid match. After that, the Grizzled Young Veterans came out, and they were challenged by the Brit-Am Brawlers for their tag team championships, so we should be seeing that sometime soon. That promo was fine. And then the main event, Toni Storm defended the NXT UK Women's Championship against Rhea Ripley. This is their third match, I believe, for that title. And I think this one was probably their best, which is crazy to say, considering that they did have pretty solid matches at TakeOver in Blackpool, as well as the original one.
High praise.
So I was pretty happy with this match. I think Rhea Ripley. I'm really high on Rhea Ripley. I think she has a huge upside. I think she brings something to the women's division that no one else brings, and I think that. Yeah, she's developing rapidly. This was the first time I've really seen her have more than just your standard 8 to 10 minute or 12-minute type match. She went a while here. They were expected to carry the main event of this particular show, and I think they carried it really well. I didn't love the finish. It kind of came out of nowhere, and the Storm Zero, it just doesn't look right, especially when Toni Storm is hitting it on someone bigger like Rhea Ripley. It it doesn't look believably damaging. It just doesn't look like good offense to me. So for a really good match where Ripley spent most of it beating Toni Storm down, just to all of a sudden hit that Storm Zero out of nowhere and it didn't look great and then it's over, that kind of took away from it for me. But I still think it was a really good match, and I'm interested to see what's next for Rhea Ripley, because I don't think that there's anything left in the well with Toni Storm, and I'm not sure who else she would be feuding with unless she's going to go after someone, a babyface mid-carder like Brookside or Candy Floss or someone. I mean, I don't even know where she would go from here.
Yeah.
So I kind of this is an idea I floated, this week, was I was thinking that she could go to NXT. And I think that NXT might be a good fit for her.
Intriguing.
Especially because I think it's very likely that Shayna Baszler is going to be leaving NXT and going to the main roster probably at Superstar Shakeup time. That'll leave a big void for a big, bad, tough, brawler, bully, mean heel to enter that women's division. And I think Rhea Ripley is the girl for the job. She already has a residence in Orlando, which she set up when she first went to the Performance Center, so it'd be an easy move for her.
Nice.
It seems like a match made in heaven to me. Rhea Ripley to NXT US. So I would love to see that move happen. But regardless, wherever Rhea Ripley goes, I will be following closely. Very high on her. So this was a pretty good show. It was carried by the strength of the main event. I gave it a 7.5.
Nice. Very nice. So very decent showing from NXT UK. And looks like, once again, NXT very solid all the way through. And then SmackDown, for me, blowing it out of the park. SmackDown is my show of the week for this week for sure. And that includes the pay-per-view for me, which I really enjoyed. Don't get me wrong. I really enjoyed Elimination Chamber, but for me, SmackDown was wonderful. NXT was really great. Raw still needs some work. Still need to improve that show there. Yeah, it's had some good moments. Don't get me wrong. They got good talent. Just they need to figure things out a little bit still. So without further ado, let's get into some news items. Once again, we will not have a topic this week simply because we covered the pay-per-view as the topic at the beginning of the show. So we do apologize if there's any confusion on that one. But once we get through the news, we will say our goodbyes and we'll be out of here. So what do we have in the news?
Okay, so the big news for the week is that Roman Reigns will be making his return to WWE television this coming Monday, Monday Night Raw from Atlanta, Georgia. He will be making an appearance to update all of us on his health status, so hopefully he'll be showing up with some good news. Secondly, Chris Hemsworth is reportedly playing Hulk Hogan, the Immortal One, in an upcoming Eric Bischoff-produced biopic about the origins of Hulkamania.
Oh boy!
So there's there's all kinds of interesting things in that sentence. So I'm just gonna keep an eye on it and see how that unfolds.
Well, he certainly has the body for it. I don't know if the Australian accent will be a problem or not.
Well, but he's blonde enough.
He's certainly blonde enough. Yep.
Well, let me tell you something, bro Thor.
I wonder if they're going to give him kind of the U-shaped bald head. If he's going to have to shave part of his head.
I'm not sure I want to see that, but make it hard to watch Thor after that.
There's a lot of things that would describe Hulk Hogan. I don't think sexy would be one of them.
No.
Chris Hemsworth, I would think most people would agree. He's more of the sexy look.
Talk about the unstoppable force meets the immovable object.
Yeah, it's a little
Hulk Hogan
it's
versus
an interesting
the
casting
sexiness
decision.
of Chris Hemsworth. All right,
certainly a capable actor. I don't know if he can pull off an American accent very well, but we'll see.
And lastly, 3 releases in WWE this week. 2 of them expected, 1 of them not so expected. Ty Dillinger requested his release and received it. Hideo Itami, who had already requested his release, and then took the pin at Royal Rumble in the Cruiserweight Championship match, has also been released officially now. And then TJP, who was the first Cruiserweight champion, has not been on TV all that much. He wrestled on 205 Live last week against Humberto Carrillo, but haven't seen a lot of him. He's also been released. So 3 lower card guys. Not a lot to say about that.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I think, again, maybe another topic for the future, but I feel like the main roster has no solution for guys that kind of fall through the cracks. if they bring them up through NXT or they get them from some other organization, New Japan, whatever, and they get on TV, and for whatever reason they just don't strike gold. They just don't break through. I think there's a lot of people that we often see at like the Royal Rumbles and what have you that just suddenly make an appearance that you see and you're like, oh, I forgot they existed. All right.
Yeah.
There's no solution for them. It's either they get frustrated enough that they leave and that they just do the in-house shows to kind of fill time at the beginning of the in-house shows, or they go to another organization completely and become a competitor. And I feel like with the problem with NXT losing 4 very talented individuals to the main roster, potentially, completely in the near future, maybe it would be a wise practice to kind of give these characters that for whatever reason don't break through an option to go back or go down a tier to NXT. Now I say tier in quotes because clearly the quality is still there. But in terms of broadcasting, go down a tier where they can develop a little bit more, kind of figure out what they did wrong, what wasn't working, maybe even change character, try something new, and then down the road when they've clearly earned it and clearly gotten the goodwill of the fans, go back to the main roster and kind of give them a second chance or a third chance to kind of really have a moment to shine on the main stage in WWE on Raw or SmackDown or what have you. But as it currently stands, NXT is the developmental channel where the new guys come in, they go to NXT, they develop, and then they get released into the wild. And then from there, it's either sink or swim. And if you sink, you either leave and go to another show, or you just drop off the face of the planet and no one sees your face or hears your name ever again. And I there's a lot of people like that. And, maybe the Lucha Party, those guys, they're great. They're great in-ring performers, but we hardly ever see them because they just don't have an interesting dynamic. They're just, they're kind of like a comedy troupe / circus acrobatic troupe that come in once in a while, put on a cool display, and then you forget about them and they're gone. They would be great additions to, say, the current NXT cast that is about to lose a lot of talent. And maybe those guys could go off and be independent on NXT and try to develop their own little career aside from the Lucha Party, it's just an example that I'm pulling out of my ass. I'm sure there's better examples out there, but I wonder if there's some better solutions out there.
Yeah, there are a lot of guys I can think of that would make sense for. For some reason, it seems to be a move that WWE has really shied away from, that they don't resort to all that often. I mean, I can't think of any examples that really come to mind, but I can think of a lot of people I think it would make sense for. I think I agree with what you said, but I would add, part of it is on creative of the main roster. I mean, there is a part of it where you're calling these people up and then you don't know what to do with them, and then they get there and then they sit in catering until they quit.
Sure.
And, there is a part of that is on creative. I mean, we're seeing it right now with EC3. EC3, the thing that he does best is talk on the microphone, and he hasn't been given a microphone
for
one
2
time.
weeks.
So is that
2 showings?
So if EC3 continues to not talk and not catch fire, is that on EC3? I would say no, that's on creative. They didn't give him the chance to showcase what he does best.
Yep, you bring up a great point.
You talk about Sanity. You brought Sanity up to be this scary stable. They come up, they lose to everybody they face for a couple months, and then they're gone. And it's like,
disappear.
What opportunity did they have to really shine on the main roster and make their name known? So I think there's a combination of things. There are certain people that just don't catch fire. I think Ty Dillinger,
it's probably one of those.
I think he's one of those guys that just it wasn't going to happen. But I think that I think Hideo Itami is probably a missed opportunity. He's one of the better Japanese professional wrestlers on planet Earth, and you really didn't do anything with him, and he didn't get a lot of exposure, and now he's unsatisfied and he's gone. That's a missed opportunity. So they've got to start using the guys that they are bringing up better. They got to make sure if they're going to bring someone up, they have a plan for them.
Yep.
But also it is certainly on the guys to make the most of their opportunities that they get. But they've got to be given fair shakes.
Yep, I totally agree, and that's we'll shelve that for now. Maybe bring it up for a future podcast topic. So without further ado, I want to thank you for sticking with us through another great episode of Hit the Mats podcast. Of course, as a reminder, we are now on Spotify, so be sure to check us out on Stitcher, on Spotify, on iTunes, and of course on our YouTube channel, Hit the Books Vids, where we host both the Hit the Books podcast featuring our comic book show and our wrestling podcast here with Hit the Mats podcast. As a reminder, we do have a Patreon page. It's patreon.com/hitthebooks. If you feel so generous as to contribute, we'd really appreciate it, and it would go a long ways towards keeping the show going and on time and producing future shows for your enjoyment. Of course, there's no obligation to contribute. If you do not feel a need or you are not able, please feel free to keep coming back to the show, listening, watching, enjoying, interacting with us. Be sure to like and subscribe us on our YouTube channel. Rate us well elsewhere. All this stuff really does help us out. Subscribe. We're trying to get over 100 subscribers total on YouTube. Of course, we got a ton of listeners on iTunes and Stitcher, which really does help us out. But those YouTube subscribers really help us push it over the edge so we can actually do a few more things and bring you guys more content. So really want to thank you for watching, listening, and all the support you give us. You can reach out to us on Twitter at HTBVids. You can talk to us on Facebook at facebook.com/hitthebooks. You can go to our website, www.htbvids.com, where you can find links to literally every single one of these feeds if you need a really easy and convenient way to find them. Be sure to subscribe on the podcast services you choose. It really does help us out, just like the YouTube subscriptions. And, of course, feel free to interact with us on the YouTube comments. I do monitor them, and I do respond to them when I see them. So feel free to interact there as well. I think I covered everything. Is that everything?
I think that's everything.
I hope that's everything. I apologize if I forgot anything, but hopefully that's everything. So, without further ado, thank you very much for watching Hit the Mats podcast. We will see you next week.